To make early offseason moves as the team has announced that they are resigning offensive lineman Alec Anderson to a one-year deal. We do have more on that up at our website, WGR550.com. And Bills Director of Player Personnel Terrence Gray is expected to interview for the Jacksonville Jaguars' vacant GM position later today. That according to a report from NFL insider Jacina Anderson. The Jaguars have announced Bengals executive Trey Brown has completed his interview for their GM position. And Ohio State is hiring former Lions head coach Matt Patricia to be their team's defensive coordinator. We also do have more trade requests. Bengals linebacker Jermaine Pratt has done so. He's been with Cincinnati since being drafted by the organization in 2019, and he joins Browns edge rusher Myles Garrett and San Francisco wide receiver Deebo Samuel. The Four Nations face-off gets underway tonight at 8. Canada taking on Sweden. Rasmus Dahlin, of course, on that Sweden team. Game will be over on TNT and Max again at 8 p.m. tonight. And in net, Canada, Jordan Binnington, and for Sweden, Philip Gustafsson. In college hoops, Niagara is looking for their second win in a row and a season sweep of Canisius as they host the Golden Griffins tonight at 6:30. That game's going to be over on AM 1400. And then in baseball, today begins the majority of the league having pitchers and catchers report for spring training. Over the last few days, the LA teams and the Cubs in Tampa Bay reported first. The Cubs and Dodgers opening their season in the Japan Series in March. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Chris Trapasso today as we make it official. The draft.
Pivoting to full-on off-season mode. Yep.
Mike Ginnnitti today.
That's another
as we make it official.
That is another signpost.
Contracts.
It absolutely is.
Anybody on uniforms or the schedule? No offense to Chris and Mike. It'll be great. This is really interesting stuff. You know, nice timing with the James Cook
yeah, the James Cook $15 million Instagram post. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. Thanks to him for giving us that. What's the move?
I think that's a very good question. It's definitely did not do that for starters. I mean, so I don't know how he reacts to that if he thinks they're going to talk to him about a contract extension, and maybe they do want to talk to him about a contract extension, but I don't think $15 million a year is a very safe place to start that. I would want no part of that, and I don't know from there how the team reacts, like the players, and I guess most importantly him. Does he do what other guys have done ahead of him in advance of not even being a free agent yet, but say, like, I'm not coming, I'm holding out. I mean, I don't want this to escalate into like a whole big thing already, but like that's where we are. Like if he thinks that's his market value and he should be getting a contract extension, averaging that annually, I can't say the Bills won't do it, but I hope they don't. I have no interest in doing that. That's nuts. That's a top of the market second running back contract, and that's a struggle. I just even with the shifting, paradigm in the league and the running backs sort of having their year here, I'd still be pretty leery.
You just can't.
In there.
You just can't pay James Cook $15 million a year. You just cannot do that. The Bills will never do that.
I hope that's right.
By salary, Jonathan Taylor is the only running back in the league north of $15 million, and not by a lot. That's just by salary. Cook is set to jump from 1 point something to 5 point something.
Does that mean for next year, because McCaffrey, I think, is at the top of the running back pecking order, average annual value on his deal, but his salary next year is less than that? Okay.
That's probably a better way to rank him. Like, McCaffrey is 9 point something at Spotrac. What's the best way to do it? Contract average? I don't know. What's the best way to do it? But 15 is too much.
Yes.
It's an opportunity to talk about his importance, which I think we've done plenty of. But I feel like the Bills, like a lot of different times, talking about roster stuff, strategy, I keep coming back, even yesterday, I keep coming back to this point that they have been successful. So normally, if you've been successful, you'd want to keep doing things the way you've been doing them. You know, sometimes somebody retires or they end up in free agency and you have to make some kind of a shift. But the Bills went, when they moved to Brady, to a mostly run-first offense. And how have they done? I mean, I didn't support it, really, but how have they done?
Great.
They've almost hardly ever lost at all. So I don't see why now, assuming, Cook is on the field, they would want to move away from that. I mean, if teams start loading boxes, then they do, and they probably are better for it because that gives Allen, more power over what happens to the offense. That's why I'm not excited about this sort of, again, relatively speaking, run first. But Cook you even saw that it mattered to them in the New England game that they put him back on the field to score that touchdown.
Get that touchdown, yeah.
Like, Cook is a core piece, I think, at this point.
And they certainly didn't, by that sort of action nor their actions really all season, try to play any kind of long game with him and his production, right? Like, because you could have, if you're them, tried to get, I don't know, what did he end up with? 17 rushing touchdowns? 16. You could have given more of those carries to Ray Davis or Ty Johnson or Josh Allen or, whomever, and try to, reel in, cut that number in half, and maybe he's not thinking about $15 million, like, touchdowns matter. They're, even if they're from 1 yard out, like, you put that stat line up and you're going to look like a guy that should get paid, I think. So they didn't do any of that. To their credit, like, he's a core piece and they treated him like that, but now's where it gets tricky, I think. What do you do with him? Like, again, he has to be open to playing out another year. Like, we were talking about this with Sal last week when he put his his outlook on the running back position up at WGR550.com. And my thought was, I don't want to negotiate and sign a new contract extension with a guy coming off of that season. If you can do that again, then, maybe we'll talk about it. I don't think I'm going to be that much more eager to pay him that kind of money in 2026, but at least I would get another year out of him. And I think all of this sort of brings the draft could hold a clue for what they plan to do there. Like, if they're optimistic about Cook falling in line and them getting him at a price that they can live with, or at least even having him on the field this year, regardless of whether there's an extension or not, then there's probably not a lot of urgency to draft a potential replacement like they've kind of done. It was Singletary, then Moss, then Cook, and I supported that. Like, every couple of years, you're drafting a guy, hopefully on Saturday. This time it was on Friday. Actually, all of these times was Friday, right? They
until
were all third-round
Davis.
picks. Right,
yes.
until Davis.
Second or third. Cook was end of the second.
Yeah. So do you pick another guy this year because you're not eager to pay Cook and you think that could end in a divorce rather quickly?
Well, who has the leverage? I mean, Cook did just have a huge year, and this philosophy point kind of ran, no pun intended, ran through him. And he didn't even play that much, really. Like, what was he, 50-some% of snaps? I mean, for 16 touchdowns and not being big, to have that year. Very interesting. So does he have leverage or does he have none? Because he's just a running back. And Davis was good too, and Johnson was good too, and there's lots of other guys, and there's this year's draft.
Rich in running backs, yeah.
I mean, of course, I say of course, they would prefer not to move on from him after that season. Like, there's no reason other than money why they would have any reason to move on from him. But they need to be careful. Like, last year was the year for kind of resetting with the cap. They might need to do more of that with where they're at. Like, when we talk about Garrett, they don't have the room that some of these other teams have going into the season. So, there's guys like Miller who would be dead money, and changes that seem kind of obvious that they'd want to make. They're not in a position, I think, where they could just, okay, fine, here.
Yeah. Look, they should never be casual like that about any position, especially running back, in my opinion, and certainly especially now. Yeah, I mean, they just don't. Their window here is always going to be now impacted by what they are paying Josh Allen. And if you're eager to add a player at a salary closer to Allen's salary than anybody else on the team, which is what you're talking about when you're talking about Myles Garrett, then all the more you have to find ways. Like, that's where you have to, I think, adhere to, if it is indeed your philosophy that I'm gonna draft a running back every few years, or maybe every year, make sure I've got a fresh guy here, and we're gonna hope that we can be productive. If we're going to be run-centric, that we can manage that without ever paying a guy top-of-market contract. I think if Cook were to get a contract in this offseason, the expectation would be he'd be one of the highest-paid running backs in the league coming off of that year. Like, that's how the league works.
Yep.
He had that season. So do you want to be that team? That's a lot to bite off. San Francisco is about to find out how they can live with. I mean, McCaffrey's at a different place in his career now, and he's had injuries and stuff, but they're paying him top dollar and a lot of other guys top dollar, and now they got to figure out how they're going to pay Brock Purdy and still keep doing all that. So they're about to join the club off a down year. The Bills are still at the top here, a definitive Super Bowl contending looking team. Despite the fact that the Eagles managed to pay Barkley what they paid him and win it all, I just don't want to get into that business.
803-0550, what is the move with Cook? I mean, it's really, if it's even that, it's the first day of any sort of real discussion about him, only because he's got this Instagram post. It's pinned.
Oh, is that what it is?
It's pinned.
Okay.
A pinned comment.
I don't know enough about Instagram to know that, but I did see it. Yeah.
Pinned, it takes it up a notch. I don't know, probably what happens. They get a deal done with him for 3 years or something at $8 million. Something like that. He's getting 5+ this year. That's, I think, I would guess where this ends. And you don't have to like it. It's a running back. I mean, Davis was a 4th-round pick. It wasn't like Davis was. We didn't have conversations about who was better this year.
No, I thought the door. I thought the door was open to that. But what I did not see coming was Cook. Whatever he did, he looked like a different running back this year. And it's not just because he scored all those touchdowns. I mean, he was running away from people this year. His contact balance was better. He just was better at everything, really. And, I don't know. I haven't read any stories about him doing work on his footwork or how he did that, what kind of training he did to do that. I just know on the field, right from the start of the season, it was like, I didn't think you'd get that corner, but you did. He just looked just quicker, and sometimes that's all it takes. But, man, I don't know. That deal, I would sign for that right now, even though it's a raise and it's a second contract. I can't imagine if he's publicly stating, to whatever extent you want to respect the Instagram post, is publicly stating it's some version of that he thinks $15 million is where he should land. I mean, that's barely half of that. I would expect him to say, no, you know what? I'll play out year 4 and take my chances in free agency and see if some team wants to give me Saquon Barkley's contract. That's more likely to me where that if the Bills are married to that kind of number, which I won't want them to go much higher than that.
It's really around half that makes it an interesting discussion. It's an interesting discussion if he won't play for less or much less than 15, because then, we've got a situation if that happens. But if he's, it's, again, so early in this that if it's like most negotiations where you end up, in the middle, right, then it's around half, that it's 7.5, 8, I think that might seem worth doing. You get out from whatever pressure this is, you get it done. He's on your team going forward as well. And it's not top of market. It's nice for him. So the Bills could feel like that's okay. And maybe he would feel like that's okay. It's 3 years to be a running back and go into free agency like that. That'll be really something.
That can be really risky. Like, just 2 years ago, every guy that did that got kind of stuck. And then this offseason happened, and everybody to varying degrees got more of what, more like a market rate contract for what they had accomplished in the league despite being running backs. That's Barkley, that's Jacobs, that's Derrick Henry even. Like, everybody kind of got fed. And so, I don't know, man. Has it been plainly said by either of us, just for people who don't? His contract is not up yet. He has another year left. It's just this, after year 3, that's when the window opens for you to avoid a guy going into a walk year. So that's what we're talking about. I mean, the Bills, for sticklers out there, they could choose to play the hardest hardball they want. Like, you're under contract. You want to get fined and not show up, then that's up to you.
They really have not had that.
No.
At all.
It's been very smooth sailing here.
And maybe that comes from a time or two overpaying, quote, overpaying, like Knox or somebody. I have no idea if Knox was going to, work him. But he got a nice contract before we really got to any pressure. Allen, how about? That was just sort of done. Here. Easy. I mean, Allen made it easy for them by proving himself like he had so quickly. So the Bills, we also never had that, amazingly almost. We never had that conversation.
Yeah, they really never had any real decision to make there. I think it was pretty obvious. Like, he's established, and okay, let's do it.
We never had a phase of, do you want to pay him $50 million?
Right.
It was like, okay, I think that's going to happen.
There was a good year, then another good year, and okay, we're done.
But Diggs got reworked, and Allen's going to get reworked, and I don't know. I don't want to just be. I don't want to settle for. There's always that, there is, but maybe the Bills are easy to work with. Ultimately, is I guess what I want to just kind of say. Maybe they are. I only say that because they have not had anybody. We've had, is he going to play? When was the last meaningful holdout or one of these? I can't even remember.
No, I don't.
Poyer, a little bit, the 1 year, but Poyer was supposed to be, maybe this is not how they looked at it, but he was supposed to be leaving.
Right.
2 years ago.
Yeah, what they've done.
He didn't.
Milano, a couple years before that, was similar. He's going to get a big market value contract, and do the Bills want to do that? Do they prefer him to Edmonds, whatever? And then they got him at a number that wasn't really at the peak of what you were worrying they might have to pay, and it sort of went away. Poyer's maybe the closest it got, but all that ended up really being was go see what's out there and then come back to us. So they didn't satisfy his top of market desires without him seeing that, well, okay, that maybe doesn't exist out there, so I guess I'll just stay put. So that was maybe tough talk by them, but it never got really, to me, at least outwardly, that we heard about, nasty or divisive or anything. It was just, okay, well, I guess it's not out there. I guess I'll just stay, is what ended up happening with Poyer.
There was never a contract battle with Diggs. Like he got restructured once or maybe more than once. He got, upped when he got here. And then there was the next thing. Maybe it was more than once where they just reworked him, but it was never like drawn out.
Right.
And then he was traded. There was never another thing to do. Von Miller just theoretically could be somebody where hey, we need to work something out here for you to stay, or they could just let him go. Like just end it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe Cook will be the first, It's pretty good. It's to be mentioned and lauded that the Bills have not had conflict like this. And who knows if this will be that, but he is a running back. That's his problem.
Yes, right.
Ty Johnson is a running back who was drafted in the 6th round and played for 4 years before he came to the Bills. And is he as good? I guess I couldn't say that he is, but he was valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And the one other thing, one of other things that Cook had going for him was that the line was so good. They've got 6 linemen on the field. That doesn't account for his breaking away against Miami, but it does account for, a lot of his success. And that's the thing about running backs that we've seen proven in the league is so much of, that's Barkley too, and Derrick Henry too with Jackson. So much of a running back's production is founded on it. You need that kind of help, or else you could be PFF's favorite and run into the back of your lineman for 17 games and run for 840 yards. And why would I pay anything for that? I've got to have the line to get the production from the running back. You got to pay the running back, but he's almost like he's not the most important thing in the equation. Let's talk about it. 803-0550 is the number. Ray is with us. Hi, Ray.
Hi, guys. Knowing that he pinned it, I love the guy, but you know what? Trade him. If that's the case, if he's not going to show up, and then treat it like a car, like, hey, I bought a car for such and such amount, and I got my money back upon sale, trade him for a second rounder. But you're right. We need a wide receiver. We need a defensive lineman. I love Cook, but there's no way I would spend more than $8 million. You can convince me of 10 at the most, but if that's the case, if he's not showing up, re-sign Ty Johnson, get another second rounder. Now we can stockpile these higher draft picks, and wow, it's still a year left. He's got some good trade value too. If it's gonna, I know I'm getting down the road, but that's
I know. I feel a little off of one Instagram post. It's pinned though.
If he's not going to show up,
right? I know. Like I was the first one who said that today, and I felt like an idiot. I'm not calling the caller an idiot. I'm just saying I felt like, what did I just do? Like I just went from I'm like a dragster going 0 to 300 miles an hour in 3 seconds. Like what just happened?
These guys don't know how into off-season mode we are.
Right.
We're trained professionals.
But that's where you go if teams end up at loggerheads with a valuable player like that's under contract. If he doesn't feel like this is my opportunity to get paid, right? I just had that season.
Yep.
And I'm a running back. If I go on the field playing on my rookie deal and tear my ACL, that's the end of it. It is all over, which is another reason why you want to be very careful about paying running backs in the first place, because if you pay him that money and then he tears his ACL, that can happen to anybody, I know, but holy cow. It's another thing about, like, running backs. Cook has not gotten hurt at all. He's played them all since he got here, but you always have to worry about the car crash aspect of that position too. Like that's another reason why you're reluctant to pay him a second contract and just feel like you're going to end up stuck.
Let's get Jim in here as we continue. Hi, Jim.
Yeah, hey guys. Well, you guys got into it later on because I was thinking to myself, going, the offensive line kind of made Cook. Yes, he's a great player. I'm glad he was on the Bills, this year, but Davis and Johnson also did well behind that line. And then you brought up the Philly offensive line also for Barkley. So I think the line plays maybe 75% of what your running back is going to be. If there's no hole, they're just going to hit a wall. So, yes, he has breakaway speed, but I think you can kind of plug in with somebody else. And what do you feel about possibly a trade with the Raiders? Because you got Jesus, I'm drawing a blanket, but the new coach for the Raiders,
Pete Carroll.
Yeah, Pete Carroll loves, versatile running backs. And, they got Crosby. He don't want to be there. What type of trade do you think, if you kick in Cook and maybe the second round next year or something like that? Maybe not even a first. Because
Well, a part of the – thank you, Jim. A part of the equation here for his trade value is really the past 20 minutes of us talking about – the Bills paying him, because somebody trading for him is biting off that scenario now. Like, Pete Carroll might like James Cook just like, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, and we all like James Cook. Do I want to pay him $15 million? No. Like, Pete, I just got here. What am I doing again? Like, that's the challenging part for the player, is knowing whether or not you're ever going to get that, or to just take the best thing they put on the table for you, at this time. Because again, there's not a deadline here. They have a whole nother year of his contract to work through if they want to. The player has to be cooperative about that. He's got to show up and play, but you don't have to do anything. That's the thing. Right.
Unless he holds out. Right. 803-0550. James Cook, what's the move? Chris Trapasso, Mike Ginnnitti, as we go through the day, and hope to hear from you next. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR.
We know play that he made on fourth down, it was an unbelievable play for him reaching out like that on fourth down, given the moment. That was a special play made by a special player. And every year that he's been in the league, he's gotten better, and looking forward to continuing that next year.
It took me half a second to think of what Alan was describing. Like, oh yeah,
right,
Kansas City.
Yeah, right.
It would have taken negative half a second had they won.
Oh yeah, there'd be if they'd won and gone on to win the Super Bowl. Maybe we're talking about a statue of him with that hand planted on the ground, reaching the ball out and all the vital parts off the ground. It was an amazing play.
And had that happened, are we just saying yes to whatever?
We're hammered. Yes. You get a contract and you get sure. Yeah, it's just fine. I don't. That might. I realize the Bills could not afford to do business that way, but any opinion about it that I'd have would be mitigated by I'm not going to kid you. I mean, I don't know that I'd be that worried about much of anything.
Also, it would be a month before it would come up because we're talking to fans every day about their life experience.
Right. And what was your favorite part of the parade?
What was your favorite play of the year? What was your favorite everything? Favorites?
I want to give Philadelphia some credit. I hate Philadelphia. I hate the Eagles. Good job holding off on the parade until Friday. Those parades, a team wins a championship on the weekend, and it's like Tuesday parade. And look, no one's going to say no to a parade to celebrate your team's championship, but waiting until Friday is just, to me, that's the move. That is a solid play there. More people, it's just easier to take off. Close the schools, whatever. It's awesome.
I'm glad they didn't put it off until March 8th.
What's March 8th?
I'll be there.
Oh,
and it would not be great going there if the parade was that day.
Yeah.
I got to say that. So this is better than that.
Yeah.
Here's David next. Hello, David.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I would definitely. The one thing I will say is I would at least meet him halfway. He's looking at he's saying $15 million. I would at least meet him halfway. The year that he had last year, who knows exactly what his production is going to be every single year moving forward. Definitely going into a new contract. But if he's posting this all like this, I'm kind of a little bit worried right now. Kind of about are we looking at possibly this his brother in his ear hey, you're worth more?
Sure.
Because his brother was the same issue, the same problem. He was bouncing team to team to team because he was trying to find that one team that was going to give him that money. And then when he got the money, he played absolute, basically crap. And he wasn't.
He was old by then, yeah. That's interesting, though. That did happen. Dalvin Cook got a massive contract extension from Minnesota after his rookie deal, or maybe just before it ended like this, possibly. I'm not sure. And not, surprisingly at all, is 3 years or so into it, 2-3 years into it, he's not really good anymore. His last year with Minnesota, he had an 80-yard touchdown run here in that Jefferson game. And, he put some numbers up, but then you have, the efficiency crowd, no, this guy is not worth it. So then it was the Jets. And he last year he was in Dallas. But this year just ended, he was buried in Dallas, I guess. But, yeah, that makes sense, right, that he could be an influence in this. He ended up he got that contract from Minnesota. And what happened later is kind of an afterthought at that point. But he did get a contract that James Cook is probably right now expecting from the Bills. It was 5 for 63.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up, and I'm not sure which thing to click to find when the timing of everything. But yeah, he went from a rookie contract making just over $1 million in 19, and in 20 his cap hit I see here was $16 million at age 25. Although, and then 2 years after that he's gone.
Right, he played 2 more years after that.
They just did not want to keep going with it.
They must have taken a big hit.
I would imagine, yeah. I'm sorry.
You'd want to avoid that.
Right, yes.
So it's good to bring up Dalvin Cook, possibly, in this. John is next. Hi, John.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Just want to float this out there, thinking, kind of out loud about this. But, maybe you make Cook a cursory offer, half of what he's talking about probably. See how that goes. If that goes over like a lead balloon, then maybe you let him play out his contract, draft a running back in the draft. And in anyone's universe, the year after is Frank Gore, Ty Johnson, your backfield moving forward. And whoever you draft. Ray Davis certainly included in that mix. So I don't see the urgency to do something here, or even if you draft a guy, is Frank Gore ready to take that next step and maybe become the next James Cook? Or Ray Davis certainly is a dynamic runner. I think we've seen that. Just want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I like Davis. I have doubts about whether Frank Gore Jr. is an NFL player. He wasn't really drafted. He wasn't drafted, so you might not think so, but he's got a name. And Johnson, it's just going to be back and forth for as long as the situation lingers. And maybe today is when it starts, right? I mean, we just got to the offseason and Cook made a comment. So here we go. I want to look at it like the position is replaceable. If I've got a good line, which I do, and I've got Allen, and plus Allen runs, which helps, I should be able to plug in a running back that I can live with, that I'm happy with. This is kind of the basis for why this year, with Cook breaking runs and piling up touchdowns, I only ever got to, he's fine. Because that's what the position is to me. I don't need somebody better. I don't even really want somebody better. Because then I got to feed him. That's why I didn't want LaShawn McCoy. It's why I didn't want McCaffrey. It's why I didn't want Barkley. I guess put Henry on the list. I have Allen. I don't need that. That's not really going to help me like I think other people might think it will. So that's my attitude about it. And I have to be true to that when it comes to Cook. But I would guess that the Bills want to extend him at this point. He's been a big part of their success, especially this year. So I would think that they would want to do that. And maybe the likeliest scenario here by far is a compromise where it's good money, it's a lot for a running back, but not the most, and he can live with it. That probably, I would say, is, and the Bills have, like we've talked about already today, the Bills have been effective at getting those kinds of deals done. So that would be, I think, the likeliest scenario. If he's difficult about it, not even to say difficult, but just like steadfast, this is what I think I'm worth, then it could get sticky.
Yep.
But I do think, you want to mention Frank Gore Jr., who's a complete guess, Ray Davis, who was fine also as a rookie, Ty Johnson, 20 other guys, 20 other potential rookies in this year's draft. They're all the same to me mostly. Put them in this offense with this quarterback, that line, 6 linemen on the field so often. I think I'm okay. And so what should that cost me? It shouldn't cost me $15 million.
No, it could cost you as little as a third-round pick in this April's draft, in a draft that's full of all kinds of different running back styles. And it's one of the deepest classes of running backs the draft has had in years. We'll get that definitively confirmed by Chris Trapasso in about 20 minutes or so, but that's how it has sounded even like halfway through the college season. It was reading and sounding like that to me. So that's what James Cook is up against. That's what almost any running back, except for the very top tier elite guys, is up against. The question is, do the Bills want to get in that club and put James Cook in that club? And I mean, they have a team to manage both contractually, right, like managing the cap, but also. How does it? Everybody will say, "Oh, it's business. We understand. Everybody has to go through it." But the year he just had, them getting into what appears to be a fight over a contract with him, might not go over great with the team that was all holding hands and singing songs all year long. And so that could be something that they have. Well, it should be something they have to consider how much it weighs to them. Meeting him more than halfway. Say, I mean, I can't tell you sitting here today, but that's a balance you got to strike because I think like having the reputation of rewarding your players who've done the work. They're good teammates. They took it seriously. They improved year over year to the point where, again, he looked like just a different, that's too strong, but just the best version of himself I could have ever imagined. I think the first 2 years he was here, I saw him getting caught from behind and thought, I just need one more, I just need a little more. And somewhere, either he got matched up with the right guys at the right moments on the field, or he did enough work to improve just enough in that area to be able to get away from people. And so that's a guy you want to reward, usually. Like, that's the way the world should work, right? I've done the work. My value is evident, and so it's time. Let's sit down and figure this out. And then the running backs don't matter cloud just starts massing and the thunder starts rolling and okay, what are we going to do here?
Getting connected with the fans brought to you by Northtown Kia, Western New York's #1 Kia dealer. Shop online at northtownkia.com. I kind of thought we could be talking about this today without the Instagram. I was kind of ready. I've been getting ready for James Cook. We talked to Sal on Monday, and he wrote about running backs. Like, this is going to be the first big conversation. It already was kind of like spotty through the season. Like, what is his value? It wasn't in terms of dollars when it came up during the season, but here he is threatening and then eventually matching the franchise record for touchdowns, and the Bills are winning every week. Like, anytime I said or we said, okay, well, he's good, there was like, what do you mean he's good? What's that great about this? Somebody wanted him to be first team All-Pro, right? Like, that's fans. He's good. That hasn't changed for me. The season happened, and maybe he was faster or something, but I think his value to me is about what it was. Maybe it'd have to be a little more. It's not $15 million. 803-0550 for your calls. Chris Trapasso on the draft. We'll have him on regularly through the season starting today. That's coming up in about 15 minutes or a little more. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR.
More of Schopp and the Bulldog coming up, live from the Just Call
What's up? Chris Trapasso coming up just after 4 as we hone in on the draft. Thanks for listening here on WGR and watching. Our shows are streamed now every day on Twitch and on YouTube, so hi. Why haven't I been told to do this yet? Like I don't face the camera. It's not like a protest or anything.
It's just where the camera is located would be weird. You've been sitting that way for 25 years.
Well, I've sort of shifted left away from this camera in recent years because it's whenever I started using my own computer because the work one wasn't as good. Mm-hmm. So this is where it fits. Like I don't have room to put it over here. I've got the call screen right here. This is where my computer needs to be.
That's where you need to be. Right.
So this is where I need to be.
Right.
Then I end up, being sort of in profile the whole show.
I'm inching a little bit to my right because of the way the camera is set up. Because most days we start, and I'll do it right now. I don't know, parts of my head are not on the screen. I just think
we need your whole head.
That seems ridiculous. Like I need to get over here where I can, be seen.
Yeah, right.
I guess. I mean,
and you could
be a horror show,
make love to the camera. Like it's which you like to do that. You sort of make sure the camera and you are having a connection. Yeah. Right. Now, you can't have that when half your head is missing.
Right. Yeah. No.
You can't have a connection with half your head missing. Yeah. Truer words.
Yeah. I'm not feeling like making love to much of anything right this moment, I'll tell you.
Okay. But anyway. Not even the camera?
No, not even the camera.
Dennis is next. Hello, Dennis.
Hey, guys. So this is an interesting topic because I think the Bills kind of have a little bit of an identity crisis in this area. It didn't really show up on the field necessarily. We scored almost 30 on everybody, but you have this incredible quarterback, and then I know McDermott has wanted to have a great running game. That's been something that he's been outward in saying. And now it's kind of difficult because you found yourself in a spot here. And I do think, like a caller that talked earlier said, part of it is the offensive line, how good it is, because we do have a nice offensive line. Well, that's great, but I think that we clearly do have the best running back we've also had since McDermott has been here. And it's difficult because you have McDermott on one hand who wants a very good running game, and you have the history of Bean on the other hand who continually doesn't pay running backs. And so the crisis, the identity crisis that kind of comes into play there is, what they really do want to do. Do they want to have that really good running game? Well, you have a piece that just set a whole bunch of records for your team, and probably the best one you've had in at least a decade.
Well, there's been no reason for them to pay running backs.
Yeah, it's been really easy to let Devin Singletary and trade Zach Moss and whomever. That's really it. None of those guys warranted a second contract, in my opinion. I mean, Moss didn't even get near it here. He left, he was gone by the time he became a free agent when his rookie deal was up. Cook is the first guy that is challenging that, right? Like, it's been easy for me to say, oh, they're just going to assembly line running backs in and out of here and just replenish and draft them and pay them rookie contracts, and that's their plan, until somebody smashes. And Cook smashed this year, and so now what? Do you pay for the smash, or do you adhere to what previously looked like your methodology, which is, I'll just get another guy to do what he does and just keep going? Again, there's a lot to consider there beyond just paying the player. It's the other players. Like, how does that go over? And there's just a lot to put the pieces together.
Yeah, I doubt football players are as a higher percentage of running backs don't matter in among football players than outside. I doubt inside there's much thought of who cares who the running back is. Right. Who cares who any of the players? No, you think of yourself as important. You think of your teammates as important. And so, yeah, there could be, a situation perhaps if it was looked at so, coldly, I guess, just so bluntly, well, we can replace you, so deal with it. You would try to be a little softer with the wording. Chris Trapasso next. What does this year's running back class look like in the draft? That and more after the update. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
The Buffalo Bills continue early offseason moves. They are announcing the re-signing of offensive lineman Alec Anderson to a one-year deal. And Bills Director of Player Personnel Terrence Gray is expected to interview for the vacant Jacksonville Jaguars GM position today. That, according to NFL insider Jacina Anderson. The Jaguars have already announced a number of other candidates that have interviewed today. Bengals linebacker Jermaine Pratt has requested to be traded. Pratt has been with Cincinnati since being drafted by the organization in 2019 and staying with the state of Ohio. Ohio State is hiring former Lions head coach Matt Patricia to be the team's defensive coordinator. To hockey, and the Four Nations face-off. It gets underway tonight at 8. Canada takes on Sweden. Rasmus Dahlin on that Sweden team. The game is going to be over on TNT and Max. And then in that tonight for Canada, Jordan Binnington. For Sweden, Philip Gustafsson. In college hoops, Niagara looks for their second win in a row, and if they win tonight, it'll be a season sweep of Canisius. They host the Golden Griffins at 6:30. Game will be over on AM 1400. And then in baseball, today marks the majority of the league having pitchers and catchers reporting for spring training. Over the last few days, the LA teams, the Cubs and Tampa Bay, reported first, with the Cubs and the Dodgers opening up the season in March with the Japan series. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Not you, it's me.
It's not you. It's you, but you didn't cross me.
And the Bulldog.
Why did I choose? Why did I just stay in school?
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
I was just a fan right now on that Liverpool goal. I was such an Everton fan right there. Everton, arm's length, not that into it, but they've come to life a little bit. Here's their last game against Liverpool in their stadium. Rivalry goes back to the 1890s, and, you know, the stadium's in Liverpool, right? This is big. So I'm into it, and Mo Salah just scores for Liverpool in the 72nd minute or so to give them the lead, and I'm like, a couple of lucky bounces there. Any person not on Everton is just like, he's amazing. Right. And I'm over here going, oh, lucky.
Puts himself in the right place constantly, right? Going to get the goal. Yep.
Like somebody would do with Ovechkin or something, you know, just a Pittsburgh fan with Ovechkin. Oh, how does this guy always get the bounce? Well, he scored 850 goals. I mean, maybe it's more than just bounces. We'll see if we can get a bounce of our own here. Tie it back up. Chris Trapasso joined us maybe even 2 seasons. I know last year for sure, every week talking about the draft.
2 years now, yeah.
And we've enjoyed that very much. We've learned a lot, and here we go again. Thank you, Chris, for giving us your time.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. This is an exciting time of the year because it's like right when you feel like, oh, man, the NFL season's over. Like, there's no more football. In fact, there's actually a lot of football to be watched. We have the Combine in a couple weeks, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to talk to you guys every week.
Well, we really appreciate that heading in here to year 3 of previewing the draft on a regular basis with you, Chris. We've spent the first hour of our show talking about James Cook, and a part of that conversation is the running back rich draft that appears to be presenting itself here coming up in at the end of April, and you know what to do and how to proceed. How rich and how much variety is there within this running back class?
There's a lot. So we're going to hear so much about Ashton Jeanty, and that will be justified. He's going to be a first-round pick, and I'm usually, or I guess I have been, an advocate of never pick a running back in the first round. But we've seen, and I understand the game evolves. You have to kind of continue to update your draft philosophies. That, a 22, 23-year-old running back up to 25, 26 can be very impactful on a team if he can make guys miss, if he can hit home runs, and Jeanty can do that. But as I've gone through the rest of the running back class, there is as much of a collection of those type of players that I can remember. Maybe going back 2017, which was such a tremendous running back class, there was probably more top-end talent in that draft class. That was Joe Mixon, Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette was in that class. But second, third, fourth rounders, and we'll ultimately be able to kind of slide these players into specific round ranges post-combine. But it is a very deep running back class where a few weeks ago, if you would have had me on, I would have said, hey, look, if a team wants Ashton Jeanty, pick him in the first round, I'm fine with it. But as I really this week finished up most of like the top 10 to 12 running backs, I'm like, man, I like him. I like this guy. I like that guy. There's so many where I'm like, maybe I'm going to kind of stick with my original opinion of just wait beyond round 1 to pick a running back. And if the blocking is good, you can get quality production from your ground game from a bunch of backs in this class.
I am curious, before we do more here, about your thoughts on Ginnnitti and just like his comps. Is he better than Bijan? I've read that. Other people disagree. I read how he was not a top high school product or prospect, partly because he was playing high school football in Italy on naval bases. Like he was not in a established program really, and then he got to the point where in year 3 at Boise he was like record stuff. How high is too high for Ginnnitti, and is there a team that you like him for?
Well, I think the Dallas Cowboys just seem obvious. I think they pick 12, and I will say by about late March I'll have like the draft order memorized. I don't have it memorized yet. The Cowboys would make sense. Just seems like a Jerry Jones type of decision. They were running out there Rico Dowdle this past season. They have a clear need at that feature back spot. Their offensive line kind of needs some work, but it's not like it's a terrible unit. Tyler Guyton, their first rounder last year, had an okay rookie season at tackle. They have Tyler Smith at guard, who's one of the better young guards in football. So I think that's probably as high as I think what seems conceivable for him, because we are certainly coming off this running back renaissance season with Derrick Henry, even Josh Jacobs, obviously Saquon Barkley, where teams are maybe saying, hey, maybe there is some value at the running back spot, which is kind of why I'm saying that I'm not totally entrenched with never picking a running back. But I think somewhere top 15 for Ashton Ginnnitti. Not quite Bijan, not quite Saquon Barkley, but he does have, to me, the best contact balance of any running back I've ever scouted. He's a little smaller, not crazy elusive, but it can sometimes take 4 and 5 and 6 defenders to bring him to the turf.
Yeah, I'm glad you referenced the running back renaissance point, Chris, because this class of running backs is coming along at a very interesting time for the league with that having happened, right? Because I think it feels like it could cut both ways. On one hand, if there's all this talent, maybe teams in there watching Josh Jacobs and Barkley and Ginnnitti and thinking like, I want to get the best guy I can get, so I'm going to draft him in the first round and have him for 4 years on a rookie contract, 5th-year option, whatever, we'll see, and then deal with it, when the smoke clears. On the other hand, if it's so deep, you can wait, pay less in premium assets, and then ultimately in contract too, but then you don't have the 5th-year option hanging there. I wonder how that's all going to play out. And like mixed into that stew for us here in Buffalo is James Cook and him posting on Instagram last night, $15 million. Like, holy cow, what are we going to do? So there's a lot of moving parts, it feels like.
Yeah, to me, what I'm taking from it is, and all those points were good. What I'm taking from how I think the league will react and should react to what we saw at the running back position in this 2024 season is that, there are certainly some guys that are not making the right decisions in NFL front offices. But in general, I think the league has gotten smarter with analytics and understanding how and where we should place the importance of the running back position and the run game in general. To me, what I'm taking from it is, if you get a really highly talented running back like Saquon Barkley behind the best offensive line in the NFL or Derrick Henry, high-caliber offensive line in Baltimore, then yes, you can get high-level production. I think back to a few drafts ago, or I guess 3 or 4 now, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne. We all talked about, the Travis Etienne to Buffalo rumors in that draft cycle. But that was like obvious that those running backs themselves were not going to just transcend and totally transform those two teams' run games because they didn't really have good offensive lines. They've been okay. They've had flashes, but haven't really lived up to the first-round hype. I think teams that already have established units up front or feel really good about their free agent signings or their year 2 or year 3 blockers, then, they'll probably prioritize an Ashton Ginnnitti or the 2 running backs from Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson. But I think in general, if teams are like, maybe we aren't going to be the best in terms of blocking for the run, then let's just wait on those running backs and hope that they can make defenders miss and make the most of what there is in front of them in terms of running lanes on every down.
We certainly have more things to get to draft-centric wise, but do you want to weigh in on an opinion on the Bills and James Cook and like what makes sense moving forward?
I would not pay him $15 million a year. Now, that could be, if we're projecting ahead one more season, everything's going up. There's inflation in the NFL too. That there are people that would be big defenders of signing James Cook to a long-term deal. Say, hey, you know what, $15 million for like an elite level running back. I still wouldn't do that because to me, I think everything that I just said about the run blocking and how key that is. I think for as great of a breakout season as James Cook had, and I think that he ran with more power, the fumbling issue was totally gone. He can hit those long runs. He's kind of deceptively fast. That was the book on him coming out of Georgia. I don't know if he has that season if the Bills don't block as well as they did. He's not super elusive. You can look at the advanced statistics on that. Not a lot of forced missed tackles. And he's not a contact balance guy where he's going to absorb 4 and 5 hits. And wow, how did he turn that, what should have been a negative yard gain, into a 7-yard gain like you see from the elite level back? So there's nothing against James Cook, and he deserves all the praise that he's getting. But if you're projecting forward, you're thinking about other veterans on the team, I just still would not pay a running back that much money. And again, like we're talking about, this running back class, I mean, again, it's not near the top of the priority list for the Bills, but they could pick another, round 4 Ray Davis type, and suddenly with Davis, a rookie, and Ty Johnson, they could be totally fine and get fine production from their running game in 2025 and beyond for a lot cheaper.
Early-ish prediction, how many running backs go in round 1? Over, under 2.5?
I can only think, unless I'm totally blanking, I can only think of one.
Okay.
So under. If Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State tests through the roof, and he could, that he could maybe sneak in there. But from just in terms of buzz right now, it feels like we're going to have one of those drafts where it's going to feel like every third pick in round 2 and round 3 is a running back. There's that many who are, all different flavors and different skill sets and traits, obviously, but it feels like that's what the league understands. That's still a premium pick, but that's where the real bulk of this running back class is on the second day of the draft.
Chris Trapasso, why do you hate Omarion Hampton and Caleb Johnson?
Okay, it kind of goes back to the same thought that I had about James Cook, that Caleb Johnson, Omarion Hampton are both big running backs, 6 foot, 225. Caleb Johnson, I think, was born to play with Kyle Shanahan, or now that coaching tree is so gigantic in the league. Stretch runs, inside zone, outside zone. The Bills certainly run a lot of that as well. Every team does. In terms of making guys miss on a consistent level, that's not really his game. And I think that's the ultimate skill that you have to have at the running back position. Now, both of them can run over guys, and the contact balance is good, but we'll see at the combine. To me, I didn't see that either of those two had elite-level traits to ultimately go in the first round. Now, if one of them runs 4.38 and has a 40-inch vertical, you add that with their size, and then they have great contact balance, then we could be maybe talking about them in the late first or early second. But I always look for those guys who are really elusive, that can make that linebacker miss, that's unblocked in the hole. That, to me, is more important than anything else at that position.
Last thing for me on running backs, is there a Cook replacement you like the most, idea, Friday or Saturday?
Yeah, R.J. Harvey from UCF. I'm kind of trying to dive deep and get super nerdy with my NFL draft comparisons this year. I'm spending a lot of time on them. I think it just helps for these conversations, for when I'm writing, where people don't know these names. I almost went with Bucky Irving for him, but I ultimately went with Devin Singletary. He's that type of just laterally elusive. It's hard for me to say that. But he has juice down the field. He's going to give you more ability to hit a 40 or a 50-yard run. That was kind of the one glaring weakness on Devin Singletary's film. He's probably my favorite right now, and if you wanted a little more size but still the same type of ability to hit those long runs, Jarquez Hunter from Auburn. Reminds me so much of Kyron Williams, who was a fifth-round pick but has become this touchdown machine in L.A. Great vision. The contact balance is awesome. He's really, effortlessly powerful. But if he gets to that second level without being touched, he can score on a 60-yard run. So those two, to me, a little bit different. R.J. Harvey's a little smaller, but those could be Cook replacements who, would cost a fraction of the price and be younger with less mileage on their legs in a few years.
James Cook replacement. How dare you, Bulldog? I mean, February 12th. How dare you? Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports.
Job's got to be done, Mike.
Here on WGR. The Bills at 30. An overview here as we have our first conversation of the season, Chris. A couple of positions that might make sense for what they need, in your opinion, and who's available, as in which positions are sort of the deepest in round one.
Well, it kind of aligns for the Bills pretty well. I think you guys know, all your listeners know, and I certainly know this, that they need help in the trenches, and I think Sean McDermott wants that, Brandon Beane wants that, whether it's defensive tackle or defensive end, and it is a very good class at both of those positions. It's not just Abdul Carter, it's not just Mason Graham inside from Michigan, and to me it's kind of ironic that it kind of aligns with that 2021 draft, where after an AFC title game loss to the Chiefs, where the Bills really couldn't get after Patrick Mahomes enough, they doubled down and went Greg Rousseau and then Carlos Basham in the first two rounds, and both of those drafts, we saw a bunch of defensive ends go in the first round in 2021. The Bills probably got one of the better ones late in that first round, and I think even if teams need those premium positions, there are enough that feel like they are going to be first-round caliber, and as always, this is combine pending. It's a really good edge rusher and interior defensive line class, so it will come down to the grades. It'll come down to, of course, what the Bills prioritize, and, of course, what they do in free agency, filling some of those defensive needs in the trenches.
Do you have any thoughts on what I think probably my first draft crush? No, I shouldn't say that. There was a receiver at the Senior Bowl that I really liked from Oregon, Tez Johnson. Yeah. Nick Emenworry, the big safety from South Carolina. Give us your broad strokes on him, because he reads a little like Kyle Hamilton, Derwin James to me, and I'm intrigued by the idea of a guy like that on the back end of this defense.
Me too.
Yeah, definitely. So my comparison for him is Jeremy Chin. He's kind of in that Jeremy Chin, Derwin James mold. 6'3", 220. He's probably going to be one of the biggest testers at the combine. So much talent on that South Carolina defense last year. It was kind of weird. They kind of flew under the radar in the SEC, didn't make the college football playoff, but then you're watching these games back and you're like, man, there's just really good players everywhere. He's that type. He can be that robber in the middle of the defense. He closes on the football like a corner. He hits like an outside linebacker. If he was there close to 30, I could see the Bills being like, this is our player that can really add a true dynamic game changer at the safety position. I think they like Taylor Rapp. Of course, Cole Bishop being a second rounder entering year two, I think they'll give him a chance. But Nick Emenworry is someone that I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at him like a Kyle Hamilton or a Derwin James type, because the traits are there. And it wasn't like he was lost in coverage or didn't know his assignment. He looks like an NFL-ready instant impact starter at the safety spot.
The Bills have 2 second-round picks and no third. Are we going to be talking about the wide receivers in the second round for them, you think?
I hope so. I mean, so my draft crush, especially for the Bills, was Jack Besh, I guess still is, the TCU wide receiver who won Senior Bowl MVP. He reminds me so much of Puka Nacua. And what's funny is it's like when I've had to say that a few times on other podcasts, people are like, whoa, Puka Nacua, easy. It's like, wait, this guy was a 5th-round pick who did not test well at the combine. No one would have scoffed at any comparison to Puka Nacua. That's probably my favorite idea for the Bills in round 2. We'll see if he lasts that long, and certainly the combine will factor in with him. But to go edge rusher and then defensive tackle, and then with that second pick in the second round to go wide receiver, to me that, at least right now, free agency, seems like the best course of action for the Bills, because I still think they need a little bit of an upgrade in their wide receiver room.
Over under first-round receivers, 3.5.
3.5, so let me think here. Ted McMillan, Arizona's going to go, and I'm saying this like I absolutely am sure of it, but it's just kind of how it feels right now. He's going to be a first-round pick. Luther Burden from Missouri, most likely a first-round pick. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. I'm going to go over because I think whether it's Jack Bash or someone else just tests into the first round, but after so many years of 5, 6, 7 receivers going in the first round, I think we had 7 last year, didn't we?
7 with Leggett.
7 with Leggett, yeah, and obviously that run late that the Bills stayed away from at the end of the first last year. I think just over 3.5, but we'll get to 4 wide receivers in the first round.
Overall, like we'll talk a lot as we go through this, until free agency gets here or Myles Garrett gets traded somewhere else. If they make a big play for a big player like that, obviously you're using some of these assets. Where the Bills are picking usually isn't that enviable, but this year there seems like, and I think I've seen from you already on social media, Chris, that you have a lower number of first-round grades on guys than usual, but the middle class here, like 20 to 60, 20 to 70, is maybe a lot of similar grades. So, I don't know, which way does that cut? Is that advantageous for the Bills? Because they're going to get 3 pretty comparable. If they use all those picks, their 30th and then the 2 second-rounders, they might get 3 pretty comparable players. Is that good or bad?
No, I think it's good, but to kind of tie into the beginning of that question, I wonder if Brandon Beane, and certainly you would have to get the Cleveland Browns to feel the same, but if Brandon Beane could be like, hey, our pick 30, we're probably not going to get one of our quote-unquote first-round grades at 30s, and we don't really want to take someone that we have graded at 45 at pick 30, so we would be more willing to part with that first-round pick this year, and we're expecting to be picking very late in the first round next year to get someone like Myles Garrett. My one thing that I'll say on this is that being a draft guy and, of course, experiencing the drought, it's always ingrained in my head, plan for the future, think about long term, get as many picks as possible, trade back. But at this point, and I'm just not insinuating that the Bills window is closed. It's not. As long as Josh Allen is on the roster, it's open. But Josh Allen is not 22 where you're just get as many picks for now would be the time to make that maybe even kind of crazy signing where you're yeah, we overspent a little, but we got 30-year-old Myles Garrett with 28-year-old Josh Allen on this team right now. And, we're all talking about the Eagles and how much money they have tied up in void years. It's almost $400 million on their roster that they're going to eventually have to pay over the next 4 or 5 years for guys who are not going to be on their team. But no one in Philadelphia cares right now because they actually won a Super Bowl. So that's kind of where I'm getting at, where I'm kind of going away from always thinking of the long-term future when it comes to this Bills team right now.
Good stuff. Last year, 10 of the first 37 picks were receivers, including Keon Coleman. 1 running back in the first 2 rounds, Jonathan Brooks, who was coming off an ACL tear and then tore another ACL in the season for Carolina. Very good, Chris. Looking forward already to our next chat.
All right, guys. Me too. Thanks a lot.
Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, giving us his draft insight between now and the end of April. Made me think of something there with that Eagles point that we talked about last year and the year before, the pressure to win and what it does to your decision-making or could do. 803-0550. If you have a draft thought, we're here for it. We're going to be for a while. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog. Mike Ginnnitti of Spotrac coming up at 5. We'll talk about James Cook and money and other Bills decisions they're facing. This is WGR.
Never misses
Canada taking on Sweden. Rasmus Dahlin of the Sabres, of course, on that Swedish team. It'll begin at 8 p.m. Game will be over on TNT and Max. In net tonight for Canada, Jordan Binnington, and for Sweden, Philip Gustafsson. Over in the NFL, the Bills continued their early offseason moves. They have announced the re-signing of offensive lineman Alec Anderson to a one-year deal. Bengals linebacker Jermaine Pratt has requested to be traded. He has been with Cincinnati since being drafted by the organization back in 2019. And staying with the state of Ohio, Ohio State is hiring former Lions head coach Matt Patricia to be the team's defensive coordinator. And then in college hoops, Niagara looking for their second win in a row, and if they win tonight, it'll be a season sweep of Canisius. They host the Golden Griffins at 6:30. Game will be over on AM 1400. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
I think if you have a passing game where you have playmakers who can consistently produce explosive plays, you don't really need that special running back who can turn a 4-yard gain into a 25-yard gain, right? But if you don't have those guys, and Buffalo has kind of been struggling to find that guy. You saw that with the trade for Amari Cooper, which didn't really work out, although he gave you a couple of splash plays when he first got there. I think you have to consider it. I think you have to consider maybe overpaying a running back who can turn those 4-yard gains into 25-yard gains.
Another angle on the Bills running back situation, if it is one, Steven Ruiz from The Ringer. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. James Cook pins an Instagram comment that he's looking for $15 million a year. Could he get it? 803-0550 is the number. Last year, or maybe 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago when it was this. After Kansas City trades Tyreek and wins. And how they just, well, no, I guess it's the year before when they did it. How, because they had won, it was a different kind of pressure on the organization to win again. And they had the, I guess you could say, the freedom of, from their Super Bowl win to trade Tyreek Hill. Like, well, we've won and we're going to do this. And the Bills didn't have that, if you will, luxury. It doesn't have to be how they thought. But it's, in my mind, you have to stay in the present. Chris Trapasso talking about the window, right? We're going to have another year of the window, whether the window's open. And I think Chris said what pretty much we'd all say, that with Allen, it's open. But what that means is he's going to play 15 years, right? And it's already been 7. So every year you have an urgency. And the kind of moves you make when you have urgency, they add up to put you at a point, well, maybe this was last year, where you have to sort of relax that. And I would say the Bills, pretty much did that last year, trading Diggs and kind of hitting a reset button on their team. But here we are again, like trade for Myles Garrett, your wide receiver, your favorite wide receiver for money. The ideas that we like as fans that make us think, in this case, the Bills will have a better chance of winning a championship. You want to get to a point. Well, how you do so is by winning a championship, where you don't have like this sort of pressure to always be making moves, so-called sacrificing your future to take advantage of your window being open, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that was proven out what the Chiefs did. I mean, they pit, Hill was not washed up. He might be now, but he certainly was not when he got to Miami. He had a couple of very good years there when the quarterback was healthy. But they thought, all right, paying him this versus getting draft capital and replenishing. And, it worked. It worked well enough. They won 2 Super Bowls after making that move. And so, yeah, I think the fan base is more amenable. It's sort of like the opposite of what we were talking about with Cook just now. Well, not just now, but in the first hour of the show, that if they had won and this came up, be like, that's fine, pay him whatever you want, I don't care. Because, we're just so happy that we won. Well, what the Chiefs did is like the opposite of that. They didn't have to make a decision to pay a guy. They'd already committed that and decided, I want to get out from under this. And how much having won was part of that motivation. I don't know. I don't know if they've ever really commented on, other than it being financially responsible and replenishing the roster, if winning felt to them like this affords us the opportunity to do this. But that's right. The Bills don't have that luxury yet. So there will be, like, if this gets, to be a thing where we're talking about it for weeks, if not months, this offseason. I don't mean every day, but, it's there. Mm-hmm. It's not solved, and you got to figure it out. The Bills not having won yet, and Cook being such an important piece of the offense, there'll be, I think, pushback. Because what have I done yet? You can't. He's a great player. He's the engine of the running game. You got to keep him. The running game's important. Remember, so it's harder. Really, it comes down to not necessarily trusting the organization, but I guess that's an okay way to phrase it. Do you do whatever you want? You won. If you want to divest yourself of James Cook now, all right, I'm here for that. That sounds sensible and great. You haven't won yet? What? How many touchdowns did he have last year? What are you doing? There will be a lot of that, I think, which makes for great conversation. Hopefully.
Philadelphia is the copycat example this year by winning. I don't know with the Bills. It works to a point, if you're trying to be like Philadelphia. Bill Barnwell had a tweet today about the Eagles. It's like they have spent up at skill positions and were rewarded for it. You'd want to be if you do that. That's Hurts. That's Barkley. That's A.J. Brown. That's Devontae Smith. High pick. Wide receiver 2. We did get a team that won a Super Bowl with a great wide receiver 2 in the end, the line. But he said what they've also done is defensively get the draft picks right.
That's right.
And they're not spending – the guys they're spending the most on, like Ross Tucker told us in one case yesterday, weren't really on the field. So that tells you even more how well they've done with their picks. And so what does that mean? I think it's more likely the Bills lean into defense with their moves this offseason. I think most people would say that, given how the season played out. Will they use all 3 first 2-day picks on defensive players? Line, DB, maybe a third one of either. Yep. I could see that.
That's where cashing in big time on those premium draft picks is so vital because, that defense is littered with guys that are still on their first deals. A couple of prominent rookies in the secondary, and DeJean and Mitchell, and then up front, the tackles are still on their rookie deals. Now, of course, that does not last forever, but that affords you've got a unit there that you feel like can be one of the best units in the league and really win for you. And okay, well then I'll go big on Barkley on top of going big on A.J. Brown and going big on my quarterback and going big on my second receiver and all that. I'm pushing that all off. Eventually those Bills, you cannot do that forever. And where that'll get dicey for them is when it's time to pay Carter. And when it's time, they've got a little bit of time, less with him than with the guys in the secondary, but eventually they're going to have to make some tough decisions. But the time to run the risk of kicking that can down the road is when you're all set up with cheap, relatively speaking, labor on the other side of the ball. On defense, you're set. You've got a top unit, and nobody really is making big money over there. Maybe their highest priced guy, like Ross said, Huff came over and got a free agent contract from the Jets, and he didn't even dress. It's rookies and just good picks that from 2-3 years ago now, and they just hit on it, and so that works for a period of time. The Bills are not they're not quite there. They They don't have that. Rousseau is not at the level of Jalen Carter, nor is Epinesso or even Al Oliver. Like they don't have that embarrassment of riches of young guys on rookie deals that are just killing it for them on defense. Like most of their guys are, okay, that guy's okay. I don't need to go out and replace him. They're all fine.
I'm not sure. Are they fine? They're good.
Maybe not even. Maybe they don't even reach the level of fine.
No, they're not fine because we're not fine.
Right. We want to get better.
The offense was fine. Cook fine. Defense not fine. So you can't. Fine does not work, I think. Which is why we're talking about upgrading.
Right.
So we got a lot of time. George Strait will be at the stadium before any of these guys. George Strait is the king of country.
I saw that in a
when did that happen?
Advertisement. I don't know.
The king of country.
I don't follow it that wing of country closely enough to push back on it. I don't really know. But I
didn't know we had a king of country.
Like, okay, that's fine.
Fine.
Yeah, fine. I'm not going to object. Yeah.
I didn't know we had a king of country. Who should be the king of country?
I'm trying to think of the guy. George Strait. Sorry.
All right. He's fine. He's fine.
That was predictable.
Michael Jackson was the king of pop. Michael Jackson insisted on being called the king of pop. But just like pretty much everything else in his life, he always denied it. He blamed it on the media. People are making up lies about me. Even that. I mean, it got much more serious. But even that, the king of pop, like, was it MTV? I think it was MTV where like they were told he wants to be referred to as the king of pop. Or like, what? And then he's like, why would they make up lies like that? The Elephant Man Remains, right? How remember that one?
Yeah.
He wanted to buy The Elephant Man Remains.
Yeah.
This can you still say Elephant Man? That was the guy. It was there was a famous guy.
Yeah. I don't know what protocol on that is exactly.
Anyway,
I haven't thought about.
Can we
it
even talk about Michael Jackson these days? I mean, that's controversial.
King of pop, king of country, king of rock and roll. Obviously, was Elvis Presley.
The king.
I don't think they've ever.
And he married. Little known fact: Michael Jackson married his daughter.
Yeah, that was.
But he denied it. No, he did not deny that.
That was tough.
He did not deny
I don't think we've ever anointed a new king of rock and roll. I think Elvis sort of just lives on in that way. Queen of soul, Aretha Franklin. I don't know about a queen of pop.
Queen of pop.
Madonna, maybe is queen of pop. I don't even know. I don't know.
Mariah.
I'm out on the royalty. I'm not sure anymore. Those ones I mentioned, I'm pretty sure of, but the rest I don't know.
Did you come into work the usual way yesterday, like through the lobby and up the stairs?
Yeah, the music was blasting.
The music is bad.
And it was like, but it was like, when I got here, it was like rock and roll.
I heard what sounded like an older country song.
I sounded like an 85-year-old. It was rock and roll.
Yeah.
I don't know what was going on out there.
I almost turned around and left.
I saw some teenagers smoking doobies out there, I tell you. Oh, my God.
But I noticed the music was back. I think yesterday was the first time I noticed it.
But it was not the usual sort of, here's a nice piano version of "Come As You Are" by Nirvana. It was like there were guitars clanging when I came in. Like
vocals.
Vocals. Yeah, and it was much louder than it usually was.
I wonder why.
I think it was those kids smoking the doobies.
Who got that changed?
I didn't notice it today.
It's always been sort of sad and ironic to me that to work at a radio station, there's no music you ever hear from your, once you turn your car off to ever. I guess like never. There was no music. There used to be. There's no music in the lobby. We share the building with different companies, so it didn't have to be like our show or anything like that. And not that we play songs. But anyway, something Kiss or something that wouldn't have to be because we share the building, there's a dentist office and a real estate and different things. But then, in here, still no,
Right.
Now, though, yes, music is back.
Was back yesterday. Did you notice it today?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought of it again today.
I didn't think of it today when I came in.
Lines are open. We'll talk to Mike Ginnnitti from Spotrac coming up in less than 20 minutes. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR. I got a tweet recently that I just remembered. A listener wanting us to fire up that quarterback carousel draft again.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
It could be a great year for it.
What is that again? I mean, I recognize the name. I remember doing it. I'm just not entirely positive how it works. I think we're all going to need you to lay it out.
No one is entirely. I've never been entirely positive how it works. We changed point systems. I don't know. The premise is cool to try to best predict who starts for whom 2025 week 1. And the sooner you do it, the better, before we start to hear about dominoes falling with quarterbacks. We did a thing where the older the guy was, the more points you got. I don't know. The point thing never really worked.
Points for years of experience. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you match the guy, Matt Ryan going to Indianapolis paid really big.
If anybody had that, yes.
Yeah.
So, however we do it, we will figure that out, I guess, if we do it. But like you have, I can think of at least 6 teams where I have no idea who their starting quarterback is going to be. You have the Browns and the Giants who pick in the top 3 that right now I would guess a rookie is their week 1 starter. I would guess maybe Cam Ward is the Browns' week 1 starter. Shedeur Sanders, the Giants' week 1 starter. They could also draft those players and have a veteran. Maybe Tyrod Taylor is back with the Giants, or for that matter, the Browns. He played for them too. And that's his role in the league since he left the Bills, is to start for somebody until they take him out or he gets hurt and the rookie goes in.
Right.
Jets, though, Raiders, Steelers, Titans are 4 teams where it's really a crapshoot, like who it could be. Maybe Fields is Pittsburgh. That's kind of how it sounds. Justin Fields was trending today for me, and I clicked on him, and it was like tweet after tweet after tweet about how good he is.
Really? Was it his agents tweeting?
Maybe. Maybe. Whenever you see something positive about me, it's my agent who's doing it.
Was it objective analysis saying he's good? Because I would struggle with that, I think, myself.
I think the Jets are the toughest one. Because Darnold is a player in this, but he's not going to the Jets.
I would expect not.
So who is? If they can't draft somebody, Rodgers isn't back, who is the starting quarterback for the Jets?
Kirk Cousins.
Is that, though, too similar to what they just did? Maybe it is, but
who cares?
What's a better idea?
I mean, even with the Achilles injury, if you want it, it's really a match. I feel like that's perfect. That's perfect,
but it's terrible.
Which is why it's perfect, because it's the Jets.
What's a better idea for the Jets, Cousins or Jameis Winston? I feel like Winston, as a player, is like close to toxic. That just the turnovers are too much.
Yeah, I despite how many teams may be looking, and maybe there may be teams that we don't even think of right now. I think you asked me this somewhere during the season. Is he starting somewhere next year? I'm like, no way. I think teams are too scared of the personality is great, but even that can be it's such a big personality. He just kind of takes over. Like, do you want that? He's going to come in and then throw 3 interceptions in your opener, and you're going to be like, everybody loves him. I don't think I want to get into that business if I'm the Jets. I would say Cousins is a better play. It's still not a good idea, but a better play than Jameis Winston.
Wow, the Jets, what do they do? Funniest idea would be Daniel Jones, I think, playing for the Jets.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be great? Or a Zach Wilson return.
Give me Rodgers on the Giants then.
Rodgers on the Giants. Daniel Jones on the Jets. So they get confused.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is you. I'm not on this team anymore.
Why is the trim for the stadium on game day green instead of blue? I'm confused because you play for the other team now.
Mike Ginnnitti of Spotrac coming up. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
Caller text Chevrolet Sports Update.
The Four Nations face-off gets underway tonight at 8 p.m. as Canada will take on Sweden in Montreal. Sabres defenseman Rasmus Dahlin, of course, suiting up for that Swedish team. The game's going to be over on TNT and Max. In net tonight for Canada, Jordan Binnington, and for Sweden, Philip Gustafsson. In football, the Bills continue their early offseason moves. They have announced the re-signing of offensive lineman Alec Anderson to a one-year deal. Bengals linebacker Jermaine Pratt, has requested to be traded. Pratt has been with Cincinnati since he was drafted by the organization in the third round of the 2019 draft. And Ohio State is hiring former Lions head coach Matt Patricia to be the team's defensive coordinator. In college hoops, Niagara is looking for their second straight win, and with a win this evening, it'll be a season sweep of Canisius. They host the Golden Griffins tonight at 6:30. That game's going to be over on AM 1400. And then in baseball, today began for the majority of MLB rosters, pitchers and catchers reporting for spring training. Over the last few days, the LA teams and the Cubs and Tampa Bay reported first. The Cubs and the Dodgers will open up the season with the Japan Series in March. It's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Serious conversation about mayonnaise here.
And the Bulldog.
And don't even talk to me about weed.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
I've never met our next guest. We've spoken a few times. Mike Ginnnitti of Spotrac.
I met Mike one time, I think, at Kevin Sylvester's house. I went to tape a podcast with Kevin and Kevin Snow about youth hockey, and I think Mike was coming in there to do something afterward with Kevin or someone else. Does that sound right, Mike?
You got it. That's a pretty good memory right there.
On Twitter, on Spotrac, anyway, it's Michael, and I go back and forth, and I don't even like sort of decide in advance when I meet somebody. It's just I'd like to analyze what is the situation where I introduce myself as Mike and then other times Michael. I don't really know. It just happens. So you're Michael on here. Do your friends call you Michael more often or Mike?
Absolutely not. No, that's from my mother only. I'm Michael to her. I'm Mike to everybody else.
Okay.
That's just how it is, and I'm with you. It's a battle. It's a constant battle. But look, nothing's worse than the name Spotrac, right? I'm constantly trying to fight that battle, so I'll take Mike or Michael any day.
Well, we won't even get into middle names here because I wouldn't want you to think I was mad.
What is the problem with the name? Do people think it's Sportac or something because it's sports analysis?
Dozens and dozens of tries, attempts.
Yeah.
I don't even correct people anymore. Anybody who wants to get close is good with me. Let's do it.
Spotrac, I bet you might get the most.
Right, that's what I said. Yeah.
Well, Michael, we've got a few questions. I just said Michael. I'm looking at it. Mike, we've got a few questions. Let's start with James Cook, who we've been talking about today. He had a social media thing about $15 million a year, which I think sounds pretty nuts, but maybe he's sort of going to dig in here. The running back market last year with veterans not only getting good money in free agency, but in several cases really working out for the teams that made those moves. How do you see where we should be headed or could be headed with the Bills and Cook?
It's a fascinating one because, 18 months ago, this was an absolute no, and I think 31 teams would agree with me on that point. So what happened last offseason's, it's wrong to say it's a fluke, but you certainly had three of the bigger names at the position at their prime, hitting a point where they could sort of max out financially speaking, and all of them, to some degree, went out there and produced at a high level. So it's a really nice time for somebody like James Cook to be sitting there saying it's my turn, especially when he's kind of the only one, right? Jamar Gibbs is a year away, Bijan Robinson is a year away, so he's kind of the only fish in this island right now. And that's probably why the numbers sound like they do. Mathematically, I can tell you right now, he's around 10-11, which probably sounds a little bit fair to anybody who kind of follows this stuff on a regular basis. But it is the right time to have this conversation. He's the right age. He's certainly coming off the right year production-wise and what his value is to this roster. But to say he's going to go up there into the Saquon Barkley world financially, is probably a little bit far-fetched, but he's in that conversation for sure.
How good of an idea is even paying him? I'm looking at his page right now on your website, Spotrac.com, by the way, folks. 4 years, $40.8 million, so average 10.2. How good an idea is that even? Because that could even sound pretty rich. Like you can even tell by the sound of my voice. Like I like Cook, and as the year went on, I got more and more open to the idea of extending him. But $10 million, I'm like, good God, what are we doing here?
Well, there's a lot of reasons to say yes to it right now. One, I've mentioned the age. He's 25 and a half, not even really, 25 and a half years old. If you're going to pay a running back, and a lot of people say never do it, right? And this conversation would be moot to them. But if you're going to do it, now's the time, 25, 26, 27, because realistically, even Saquon Barkley only got 2 years guaranteed on his contract, right? So that's what we're talking about here. So there's 1 year left. You tack on 3 or 4 more, but only 2 of those total out of that 4 or 5 combined has the guarantees that we're talking about here. So that's reason one. Reason two is he got himself a $4 million raise already because of the proven performance bonus that's built into these rookie contracts if you make a Pro Bowl or you play a certain amount of time over your 4-year run here. So he's already gotten himself a nice raise to the point of where an extension would actually probably lower this cap hit for Buffalo in 2025, which is not for nothing when you're sitting here minus 12 overall right now in terms of what we're looking at. So there's a lot of reasons to say yes. There's a lot more reasons to say no. But I think Buffalo's probably sitting here saying he's probably one of our top 2 or 3 extension candidates right now heading toward March.
Maybe it's right to do Rousseau next then. Someone else kind of in this camp. We talk about Myles Garrett a lot, and where would that leave things with Rousseau? Maybe a $20 million-ish idea, and would you even need him? Would you want him if the Bills were to execute a trade like that? What's the right strategy on him in your mind?
Yeah, he's peaking at the right time as well, although, you can say maybe that plateaued a little bit in 2024. He's expensive. He's fully guaranteed at 13.5 or so on that 5th-year option, but he's also young. It seems like there's a little bit more juice left to squeeze out of this guy. He seems to fit in this offense or defense most of the times here. But you're right. We've got names, right? We've got Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett, just to name a few. We've got Khalil Mack in free agency and 6 or 7 really nice players in the draft that are all competing for kind of these 1 or 2 spots that Buffalo needs to upgrade here over the next couple of months. The problem is this. He's young enough, 24 and a half or 24 and change right now to where teams are going to value him higher than maybe somebody else would in a room. He's $25 million on the books right now. That's a lot. It's a lot. But when I tell you Myles Garrett's 40 and Max Crosby's $40 million a year, and you'd have to give up multiple, significant top 100 draft picks just to get those people in the door, signing Rousseau makes a lot more sense. Here's the only pushback I'd have. Greg Rousseau could very much be part of this trade piece. I think a cheaper, younger player that maybe hasn't hit his ceiling yet is attractive to certain teams, and maybe those teams are a tier 2 below where Buffalo is, who are kind of going all in to get to the Super Bowl over the next 24 months.
Yeah, that is I've been saying it ever since the Garrett thing, got legs last week when he demanded the trade before the Super Bowl. Rousseau, if the Browns like that idea and he can replace one of the premium assets you'd have to pay to get a player like that into the boat, I think I can find a way. I'm sure the Bills could find a way. You can tell me if they can't, to pay Garrett $35 million as opposed to paying Rousseau $25. Like that. From Cleveland's perspective, why do they do it? Because they got a gun to their head. That's why they do it. So they get a good player and they pay him, and they can say this guy's good. No, he's not Defensive Player of the Year, but he's good. And they solve their headache with Garrett. And the Bills come out to me. That's $10 million in assets I would gladly spend.
I think that's right. And we're at the point right now with this organization where giving up a draft and a half to get a player like that to be the closer, right? The one player that comes in to get you over the finish line, not unlike what Saquon Barkley was in free agency for the Eagles last year. That's what these teams are looking for, those 1 or 2 defining players that take you to the next level. And certainly he's one of them, but it's a boatload. It's a truckload of picks. It's a truckload of money. I'm not sure there's a lot of GMs or front offices right now that would actually pull that trigger, but we've seen them do this with Von Miller one time in free agency. We've seen one big swing. Why can't there be one more, I guess?
Mike Ginnnitti of Spotrac, our guest here on WGR. What about wide receiver in this free agent period coming up? Every name I see looks like, somebody that's probably done, just about done. Not all of them will be. I do like Godwin at the top, but he's coming off another injury, and I'm not counting T. Higgins. Joe Goodberry on the Bengals, he's not going. They're going to franchise him. So maybe I just want to disqualify him. Everybody else, Diggs, Hopkins, Amari Cooper, even. What's your feeling on just like what the wide receiver market will be like?
Right, Brandon Cooks, Keenan Allen, right? These names, even Hollywood Brown, who I think Buffalo's been early on linked to here a little bit because of the sort of patchwork play he can be. Everybody's got baggage. Everybody's got red flags. And the problem is, because you laid it out properly there, it's already a bad market, or at least not a deep market, and it's not a great draft either, which means that some of these names that have red flags are still going to cost a ton of money because it's supply and demand, right? So Chris Godwin, I think he's one of my favorite players offensive-wise in this entire free agency because of what he's been able to do consistently. But even with that second big injury, I think he's a $20 million player this year. Amari Cooper, we saw what happened, him kind of fizzling down the stretch here, still a $15 million player heading towards 31 years old. So supply-demand's a problem. I think the Bills probably have to think a little bit simpler, not unlike they did last year, certainly getting more out of a player like Mac Hollins than a lot of people thought they could. But I anticipate there'll be somebody in the middle here, right? Somebody at the 7-8 incentive-laden mark that comes in and swings. Maybe that's a Darius Slayton. Maybe that is a Marquise Hollywood Brown, somebody like that. But it seems like the big fish at the top, who aren't that big to start with, are going to be way too expensive for a team like Buffalo looking to patchwork some things here.
Man, Mike, Slayton is a good pull. I was looking at this list a couple of times, and the name I came up with, and I couldn't find anybody I really liked as a fit, but I thought of DJ Chark. I'm not sure if he's got anything left either. He's been hurt. But Slayton is a player I've kind of always liked. But for one reason or another, Daniel Jones, Neighbors coming in, like it never really took off. But he's had some good games.
No question. And I think they were sort of looking for Curtis Samuel to be a similar type player, and obviously the injuries have just hampered his career the whole way through. I'll throw a trade name out there as well that I've been eyeing for a while here just because I'm not sure where this franchise is headed. But Jacoby Myers feels like he's going to fall off this Raiders roster. That's a name that has pedigree, playoff experience, a lot to him, and he's had a bad run of offenses and quarterbacks around him, so maybe he's a quick upgrade player as well.
I like that idea. He had a nice season.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because whether it's at the very high end of the receiver market, like guys that could be available in trade are a whole nother piece of this, right? I think we've learned over the last few years, even though last year was very quiet in this department anyway, despite all the talk about Brandon Ayuk and others, it didn't turn out to be a year where Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams and A.J. Brown, other guys got moved like that a few years ago. Is there that market out there to varying degrees? You mentioned Myers as one. That's not at the high end of it. We've gotten calls about DK Metcalf at times. I'm not sure that the Bills can be in that top-end marketplace, but does it exist?
Metcalf might be my favorite one. He's going to need a contract, though. But he is that X-factor type player, and maybe he's the player that comes in and teaches Keon Coleman how to be Keon Coleman too, right? So there's a bit of that there. The Deebo Samuels, the Cooper Kupps, they're on the trade block for a big reason, and that's injuries, age, and just a bit of decline here as they head towards the twilight years. But we've seen players like that latch on with really good teams and really great quarterbacks and find an extra gear here. So I'm not going to say the Buffalo's out on players like that, but they're probably thinking a little bit younger and fresher, no question, just based on how they've handled their off seasons the past couple of Marches here. But DK Metcalf is a big swing, a lot of production, some off-field stuff, some of that going on. He's kind of expensive for a one-year trade if you're not going to extend him. But that's still a name that's going to be out there because that Seattle team is in a bit of a flux, right? With Tyler Lockett probably falling off the roster, I think they're going to extend Geno Smith and make things even harder for themselves. So they're probably going to look to save a little bit here and there, and that might be one of the ways they do it.
Harder for themselves monetarily, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems like extending him is the better result because of the lack of availability elsewhere. It doesn't make sense for them to be an Aaron Rodgers or a Kirk Cousins team.
Right.
So just 1 or 2 more years of Geno Smith is plenty to sort of contend right now and for what they want to be, slightly above 500. But they probably trim a defensive player and an offensive player to go with that.
You already mentioned these guys are on the market for a reason, but, I mean, they've both, Cup and Samuel are two of the names you mentioned there, have had incredible highlights in their careers. I mean, Cup's a Super Bowl MVP. Samuel has been one of my favorite guys in the league to watch, period. Is there any, like, do you think that's just a horrible idea almost at any price counting on them? Or do you think that there's a space in there where, like, if the price is right, both to acquire and then, have on your books, that makes sense?
I'll say it this way. Generally speaking, when names are floated in early February, it's more likely that they end up getting released in some degree. It's more likely that the teams that are actually interested already know that that their respective teams have made a decision on these players, and they just want to wait it out and get these players at least at market value at cost. Cooper Kupp has guaranteed money attached to his contract, whereas Debo doesn't. But that will help, right? If Cooper Kupp is being paid by the Rams to some degree, I think it's a $5 million guarantee, that will help suppress what he costs on the open market. That's where teams like Buffalo come in swinging and say, look, we don't have to lowball you because you're already making some money from the Rams, and we've got a nice spot for you here right now. So there is an opportunity there if they end up getting outright release, which I think there's a very, very good chance of.
Mike Ginnnitti from Spotrac, our guest. I do Matthew Collar's Purple Insider podcast every Wednesday through the season. It is Wednesday. We talked this morning, and we're always talking about what they have to decide at quarterback. And he's like, I don't know what they're going to do. What we don't know is McCarthy's health, like what their forecast for his status to be. I just feel they should just do that, assuming he's well enough. I mean, it'll be a year since his injury by, training camp. And so if I'm right, Mike, what's the best prediction on Darnold? Is it to tag him and then trade him? I mean, if they don't want to have them both there, which I think they shouldn't, then Darnold can maybe do well financially, but play for somebody else.
It's must-see TV, must-see everything, really. It's one of those situations we just don't get very often where a team has too many quarterbacks to deal with, and they don't know exactly how to process it all because we don't get this very much. So, yeah, the tag and trade is fascinating, but I'm not sure there's 2 or 3 teams that would generate enough interest to really make that worth their time. Not that they have a cap situation or that they need to be uberly aggressive about it. If they let him walk, are they getting the 3rd-round comp pick? Yes. Is that enough? Probably not. But is it enough for them just to be able to kind of wipe their hands clean of this and start fresh in the J.J. McCarthy era on March 12th immediately? I think that's probably where we end up. He just walks. And by the way, he walks, and there's a keep us posted kind of thing, right? If nobody's giving you the 4-year contract that I think he deserves, and it ends up being like a 1 or 2 year deal, come back and talk to us because we'd be interested in something like that if it's kind of like a holdover to kind of redshirt J.J. McCarthy for 1 year. But if not, and the Raiders or Tennessee blow him away with 4 for 160 or something higher, I think Minnesota's just going to have to grin and bear it, make it easy on themselves rather than have the franchise tag hang over them for better part of a month maybe.
You mentioned the Raiders and Tennessee there. Is there a spot for Aaron Rodgers, you think?
I think he's last on the list right now, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but I don't know that there is. We can have some fun with it and say he can go out there and compete with Brock Purdy for a year, just because I know there's relationships that exist there, and maybe that's the way they try to suppress Brock Purdy financially for a year. Outside of that, I'm not sure that there is. I really don't. I don't know that he'd pick a Tennessee team that might be worse offensively than what he just dealt with the Jets. The Giants appear to be swinging a little bit bigger based on some early reports. So he's probably last of 6 or 7 quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. Pittsburgh's an option, but I don't know why Pittsburgh wouldn't just go back to one of the wells they just had, knowing that those guys at least understand the offense a little bit.
Before we wrap up with you, I want to circle back to Garrett a bit here, or Crosby, too, for that matter. We didn't really talk much about Crosby. The mechanics of that trade, from Cleveland's standpoint, from Buffalo's standpoint, I've read some reference to the Bills have to have the room on their cap in order to make the trade to begin with, but is there a way that they can, obviously you need Cleveland and Garrett's cooperation, redo the deal before the trade, so like a sign and trade type of deal? How can mechanically the Bills, without opening up $20 million in cap space to make the trade?
Yeah, if there's an extension on the books, they can kind of do things simultaneously, right? They take on the cap hit at 19 and change or so, and then from there they'd have to bring in a situation where they'd be extending him to lower everything and make things work from a compliance standpoint by 4 p.m. Eastern that day. So it's nothing that Cleveland would do. They're at a minimum situation. I don't believe they'd need to eat any money there. They've taken on $36 million of dead cap as it is, and he's easily the prize trade target out there this offseason. So Cleveland's going to do nothing. They're going to sit there and take the best offer most likely and do nothing else. But Buffalo would absolutely need to have a contract on the books, agreed to, wink-wink negotiation, so that these things can happen simultaneously. And I'd say the same thing with Max Crosby, who's got 2 years left. It's a little bit more of a aggressive situation. He's younger. I think the money's probably exactly the same in terms of what they're looking for, probably a 3-4 year extension. So very similar situations, probably pretty close in trade assets. Huge swing for a team like Buffalo that I think it would be a surprise, even though they've been linked directly to it already.
Yeah. Mike, I'm always so impressed with your knowledge. Can you do this on all sports? Like if I asked you about Clayton Kershaw, could you give me a 90-second answer or 60-second answer on any baseball team or anything like this? I mean, your sport covers it all, or your website rather covers it all.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Basketball's probably the hardest one for me. Baseball, I'm with you. You can give me anything 1 to 30 on baseball. I'm there. That's actually my number one sport.
All right.
And I'm diving into the live golf world, and some of the I'm the WNBA guy over here, and all that sort of stuff. But basketball has gotten to a point where it's so darn complicated that we've got 1 or 2 people on it specifically, and I kind of fudge my way through some of those conversations. But
Right.
For the most part, I'm invested from A to Z, and I'm loving every second of it.
How big is your staff?
It's about 6 of us now. Many of those are contractors. There's a couple of us full-time still, and it's just data-driven nerdiness. It's just
that's what I
picking
love.
days to write articles, and for the most part, we're just diving into these numbers, which is why I can rattle these things off more than I can rattle off the birthdays of my family members.
It's so good. When I was a kid, video games got better and better, and I always just no, I just want the data. I just want Stratomatic and dice and cards. Like I don't need these graphics. I don't want to play. I got into Madden eventually, but I didn't want to play the video games where you didn't have everything was kind of made up, like Tecmo. I liked it a little, but it's basically your ability to maneuver the controller better than the other kid is who's going to win the game. No. Give me the Spotrac. I want the numbers and odds and data and everything like that. So
I liked playing all those games just fine. The thing that was really novel about Super Tecmo when it came out, if not the original Tecmo, and then of course the Madden games and all the other iterations, the stats, like it kept stats for you. It had not advanced data, not analytic, but being able to get QB12 up to like 4,500 yards passing in a season was pretty damn cool when you were playing that game as a teenager.
True enough. All right, Mike.
I think I told you guys this before, but this site exists basically because I was databasing my baseball cards growing up as a kid. I was nerding out on this stuff, literally databasing, the number of the card, what the set, the year, and then going to flea markets with what I needed and trying to fill in the blanks. That's what I was doing, and that's what I'm still doing now on a bigger level.
Do you have are you still into that? Do you have that data?
Huge.
You do? Okay, interesting. Huge. That's not for public knowledge, though. Your card site. Mine isn't.
No, that's just for me. I try to keep that quiet so I can't really say it live on the radio.
I know mine isn't. My card spread. I won't even let Bulldog see it.
No. Even though we share a Steven Strasburg rookie card.
We have one card together. That's right. Mike, thanks a lot for this.
I appreciate it.
Mike Ginnnitti of Spotrac here on the West Her Hotline. What should happen with James Cook? Rousseau to the Browns. He was there with that. That is Slava Kozlov to the Sabres for me, is Rousseau to the Browns. Come on, Browns. Maybe. But depends if they like him. Can you sell that? Can the Browns sell that? 803-0550 is the number. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR.
We know
The Four Nations face-off gets underway tonight in Montreal, Canada, taking on Sweden. Sabres defenseman Rasmus Dahlin on that Sweden team. Game will be over on TNT and Max with puck drop again at 8 o'clock. In net for Canada, Jordan Binnington, and for Sweden, Philip Gustafsson. Over in the NFL, the Bills continue their early offseason moves. They have announced the re-signing of offensive lineman Alec Anderson to a one-year deal. Bengals linebacker Jermaine Pratt has requested to be traded. Pratt has been with Cincinnati since being drafted by the organization in the third round of the 2019 draft and staying in the state of Ohio. Ohio State is hiring former Lions head coach Matt Patricia to be the team's defensive coordinator. And then in college hoops, Niagara looks for their second straight win, and if they do win tonight, it'll be a season sweep of Canisius. They host the Golden Griffins at 6:30, and that game's going to be over on AM 1400. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
The future would look like. If you're going to be part of this team, you're going to attend all of the training camp. You're not going to do Pat McAfee interviews anymore. If you were to stay here, here's how we would want it to be. So this to me is Aaron Glenn getting control back.
Good for him. Diana Rossini. Tweet from Vince. George Strait, absolutely the king of country. 60 number one country hits. 12.
Is that a lot? That seems like a lot.
Genre number one hits.
That also seems like a lot.
What's one of those? Like that? Is that a
crossover? Like where your Billboard chart, country chart, pop chart.
Right. What's one of those songs? Maybe would I know one of those songs? He was kind of famous to me, like 20 years ago.
Yeah, I got nothing for you.
Third in all genres of gold and platinum albums. Best sports comparison, Martin Brodeur.
All right.
I had to read that. I don't read all the tweets. I had to read that. I'm ready to start comparing musicians to goalies and stuff. I did just drop Kozlov, which is the Hasek trade. So the timing's pretty good. But the Sabres settled when they traded Hasek.
Settled. Right. Well, that's all right as a comparison then. I mean, I think Rousseau's Kozlov was a pretty good player. He just didn't want to be here when he got here, and that was it. But he was a pretty good player. He was not the top guy on any of those Detroit teams, but he was good. So maybe it works, but it's the same situation from Buffalo's standpoint. Buffalo in that situation is Cleveland in this situation. I got to do something. Now, I don't know if Garrett would get to the point where he's withholding services. I mean, Hasek was talking about going back to the Czech Republic, or at the time Czechoslovakia, and just retiring. Or was it Czech Republic by then? Whatever. Anyway.
It was.
And now it's Czechia. Anyway, that a little bit different. Garrett's not talking about quitting the sport if they don't trade him, but he may withhold his services. So there's a threat from the player that could make you, it's not an advantageous place to be dealing from. You could get stuck with, the best we got here is a 1 and a 2 and this Rousseau guy. So, I don't know. Let's start building up our opinion of Gregory Rousseau. We're the Browns. He's good.
If I were the Browns, I need Mike Ginnnitti back. I might want to take it into the season. What do I need him? What do I need him on the field this season? And if he's not going to play, which will cost him financially, but now I can offer you a guy in week 7 that is totally fresh, that can come in, and he might be worth just as much as I want him to be worth right now. In that case,
the only problem with that is that you're not getting anything right now to start the process of digging out of where you are.
That's right.
You're holding that off till the April of 26 draft.
Which, I did mention this another time, I've read, I think from Seth Walder of ESPN, it doesn't quite work. I wanted to say is what they should do, but that's not a future draft anymore. That's the next draft by then. His idea was that the Browns now should be trying to get 26 picks.
Because this draft isn't so rich.
Well, they have the second overall pick, and they're not about to win. So go through this year, maybe you get your quarterback right, like New England with May seems to have done, or even Daniels with Washington. That's perfect. Or Knicks. And if you do, then next year's draft comes along, and you've got 2 or 3 firsts. And maybe somebody that made that trade, it could even be the Bills, perish the thought, but they're not as good as they thought. And instead of the 30th pick, it's the 12th pick or something like that. Could be another team, Philadelphia or somebody else too. That's the point. That especially if this would work itself out in the metrics, but especially if your suitors are teams that are drafting late. Well, you know what?
Kick it down the road. Anything
Yes,
can happen.
that's better for both of us.
You make that trade with the Bills. I'll say this very quietly and gently. Something happens to Josh Allen. They're not going to win 13 games, probably. So you're
use Hurts next time.
Okay. But either way, you putting it off gives you at least a chance of that happening. Whereas if you're locked in this year, you're locked in. That's it. That's all decided. There's nothing to be done about it. You're settling for what it is.
And the Bills can try to draft a starter to help them win this year at 30 and have Garrett. And if it works out, great. For the Browns, we'll see. We'll get your pick next year and whatever else, 1, 2, 3 next year, something like that. And see what, that looks like then. I like the thinking there for Cleveland.
In this scenario, I would be stunned if that happened, but I like how it sounds because in this scenario, you know what I'm doing? I'm getting Myles Garrett on my team, and then I'm drafting this freakazoid safety from South Carolina, and there we go. I'm ready to go. Yeah. I'll find a receiver out there somewhere, and I'm ready to play the feud. I haven't really addressed the interior of my line. I know, but Garrett and that safety, you can tell I like the idea.
And James Cook at 4 for 40.
Right.
Jay is next. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, guys? So here's where I'm sort of thinking on this. And when Chris Trapasso was talking about all those players, I just kept yelling in the car, yes, I'll take that. Yes, I'll take that. I'll take that. Just everything on the menu, yes. So here's what I'm thinking. I think it's proving to be, in my opinion, Brandon Beane's biggest, most important year as GM with the Bills. I say this with all caution that the Chiefs are showing a little bit of blood in the water. You've got the Bengals who are likely to lose T. Higgins. You've got the Ravens who are still great, but Derrick Henry, as an example, is another year older. You've got our division, which is still very weak. We got a team that likely, that does have a very good offense. Okay, I think it could still be better. So I think what Beane does this year will be so crucial to whether it's getting a Garrett or a Crosby or one of these amazing, safety folks, or maybe letting Cook go and getting another receiver if it's that, or a running back if it's that deep in the draft. I think all these moves that Beane does are so crucial because, and I'll end here, he's got to show, I think, that he can really hit on these high draft picks, like a first and even seconds. I think he has to show that he's got these guys locked in to make immediate impact, because if we're dealing with these teams who are sort of showing some signs of weakness, albeit maybe more than others, we've got Josh, who's still the unicorn in our stable, then I think he has to put up and get us to that promised land. I'm just tired of talking about what if. I need him to show me. Thanks, guys.
The division being weak. I mean, the Bills have had it pretty good these last few years in the division. Miami has pushed them. That's it.
Right to week 18 last year.
Once. Yeah, that's it. I saw today, can you think of the last playoff game an AFC East team won that wasn't the Bills?
Miami hasn't won a playoff game in 20 years, right?
25.
Okay, so
2000.
Oh, it's going to be New England the year before Brady left.
The Super Bowl, the Patriots over the Rams, is the last AFC East postseason win that is not a Bills win.
Because they lost their wild card game to Tennessee, and Brady, his last pass was a pick six.
Right.
It was so great. That was so, psych. Great job with the 6 rings. I'll shut up now.
Was that the night of Bills-Texans? Was that after Bills-Texans? I think it was a Saturday night.
I'm pretty sure that's right, yeah.
Well, it's always said that you have to get the draft right. and the Bills, they have some picks like first 2 days in recent years that are, good, fine. Cook, Bernard, Torrance, Kincaid even, but Coleman not yet. Bishop not really yet.
Definitely not yet. I'm optimistic for him. I think he'll absolutely be one of their starting safeties, but that doesn't have to work. So that's not made yet. No.
I mean, didn't make a play for them all year. So Kincaid is kind of borderline what that's going to be. Elam is a miss. Year before that is Rousseau and Basham. Year before that is Epinesa and Moss. They have the few later round picks that have been really good. But it goes back 5 years, really, since it looks great on paper. Not even. It goes back to Allen. What am I even saying? It goes back to
Cook is a second round pick. I mean that's worked.
That's right.
But
I'm not saying they haven't. No.
Right. I know. No, but
overall,
when you look at Philly, and I think the callers kind of got it. Like you're going to need here. You'd like to get guys that can step in and we're not like Cole Bishop. Like I thought Cole Bishop would be starting by week 6 or something. Second round pick. It's a safety. Let's go. What have I got? Hyde and Poyer are gone. And, whether it was that they trusted Hamlin and Hamlin was at a certain level that they felt good enough and safe with, but I don't know, it doesn't look great that Cooper DeJean is making pick sixes in the Super Bowl, and my guy, only played when guys were hurt.
And he was pick 40. We talked about this for a second yesterday or Monday. I wonder how they felt about him. At 33, the thing we talked about this constantly at the time. The best thing about the 2 trades to 33 that the Bills made from who ended up being Worthy and then Leggett was that they gave themselves all of Friday to evaluate, negotiate, anything. That just seemed. I don't know. Did they just decide that they were not going to make a third trade? Because they'd already made 2, and we were all going to argue about that. Trading with the Chiefs. Maybe. That's enough. All right, that's enough. When we used to do firstpick.com, I can't just trade 70 times, even though every offer is great. Maybe in the real world, all right, we did this twice.
Yeah.
But they went ahead and picked Coleman, and maybe to them that was a no-brainer, but I kind of doubt it. Because there were other receivers who were right there with Coleman, including McConkey, who was the next pick, I believe, and he had a great rookie year. Whatever. There were interesting ways to play that, and DeJean would have been one. With having the second pick there in Bishop, how did they get the... Oh, no, it was the pick they had. That was their original second-round pick.
Yeah.
So that could have been... They could have done 1v1, the safety first into DeJean, and then figured out receiver later, and they would have been criticized, but I wonder if there were people. I wonder if McDermott would have wanted that, or just how much.
I'd love to know, because DeJean does. I mean, Philly's using him as a nickelback. He's not even playing safety for them, so he's like Taron Johnson for them, more or less. And so there was more positional flexibility. He was a corner at Iowa that had the size to be a safety, and so it was one of these guys that could be a little bit of a hybrid. Bishop didn't offer you much in the way of playing corner. You're drafting him to play safety for you, and that was it. So. Maybe that's all you needed to push DeJean up the board to where he got picked and have Bishop be where he was, is that flexibility.
803-0550, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
More of
Was that the first ever Greg Rousseau, Slava Kozlov comp in world history?
I do believe so, yes.
Has to be, right? Doesn't it? Canada versus Sweden tonight. 4 nations face off. Greg Wyshynski will be on the show tomorrow. 1 to 10. How excited?
I'm going to say I'm a solid, I think overall for the tournament, I'm a solid 7 or 8. Tonight, like a 5 or a 6. Because I don't know. I was talking to Paul about it last night. And, it could be a little kind of feeling out, but it's a short tournament. I mean, there's only 4 teams, so there's 3 games, and then, the top 2 are going to play a championship game. So maybe it'll be intense right away. But I'm expecting it to be very good hockey. Like so maybe I should say more than 5 or 6. I'd be very disappointed if I don't come out of this saying I can't wait till they do that again. I mean, the lineups just look incredible. At least for Canada and the U.S. and Sweden doing it. Finland's a little bit in the weeds, especially on defense. But I mean,
Risto,
he's hurt. He's not even there. That's one of the reasons Joki Harju ended up going. He was not originally one of the guys. There haven't been. There's a dearth of and I guess who else is hurt? Heiskanen, I think, would be on their team, and he's also hurt from Dallas.
Where's Ludman?
I don't know where Ludman is.
Is he available?
They have had a dearth of first-round defensemen from Finland. Like they haven't been guys. There haven't been prospects, so they're not rich there. But man, Canada and U.S. those rosters are bonkers.
I don't know. Is this different now? This is going back a long time, but I think of the stereotype on the Finns being two-way forwards.
Jiri Lehtinen.
Oh, so Tikkanen, Koivu. I mean, so many guys, both Koivus, so many guys that they just ate you up in your own end. Totally. Leno. No, I don't know about Leno. But guys that were like famous for a certain brand of hockey with Finland. But that's 25, 30 years ago. I don't know if it's different.
I think if they had their full complement of guys, Heiskanen's not that guy, but if they had him, I could see them playing a shutdown. Like they might be the team I'd be worried about ruining the tournament if they had all their guys. But they don't, and I just think they're probably going to get run over. But they would be the most likely candidate to try to win 2-1. And maybe that'll be how this thing ends up going. We'll see. But man, the power plays, just the guys that are getting on the ice for these teams, it's just insane. I'm very excited to see, a power play with McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby, and who am I leaving out? I mean, they're just stacked. It's very cool. And even the lines are stacked. So it should be really fun, I hope. Anyway. I'm hopeful.
TNT.
Tonight. Tomorrow, ESPN. Next Monday, I think there's 2 games. There's an afternoon game and then an evening game. And both of those, I think, are TNT. Then the rest of it's all ESPN. So.
All right. One more thing that Mike Ginnnitti said when we went over some Bills contract dilemmas, perhaps, choices that they have, was about Amari Cooper. And I want to bring that up when we return. $15 million, that's what he's thinking? I don't know. Actually, I do know. That's a no for me, dog. Is it a no for the Bills? $15 million for James Cook. If it is, then what? Lines are open for your calls as we get into this a little bit more after the update. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
Call or text
The Four Nations face-off gets underway in just a few hours as Canada will take on Sweden to kick the tournament off. That will be at 8 o'clock tonight. Sabres defenseman Rasmus Dahlin with that Swedish team. The game will be over on TNT and Max. And then in net tonight for Canada, Jordan Binnington, and for Sweden, Philip Gustafsson. To the NFL, the Bills continue their early offseason moves. They have announced the re-signing of offensive lineman Alec Anderson. It is a one-year deal. Bengals linebacker Jermaine Pratt has requested to be traded. Pratt has been with Cincinnati since he was drafted by the organization in 2019. And Ohio State is hiring former Lions head coach Matt Patricia to be the team's defensive coordinator. Over in college hoops, Niagara's looking for their second win in a row, and if they do win tonight, it'll be a season sweep of Canisius. They host the Golden Griffins tonight at 6:30. That's in just about a half hour, and that game's going to be over on AM 1400. And then in baseball, today began the majority of the league having their pitchers and catchers report for spring training. Over the last few days, the LA teams, the Cubs, and Tampa Bay reported first, with the Cubs and the Dodgers opening up the season with the Japan series this March. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
If you wrap foil around that, just like the little bit of the base part of the banana where the fruit is, wrap foil around that top and they will last longer.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Who needs your bananas to last longer, though?
Look, I don't want to go to the store every other day for bananas.
They're 8 cents each.
What the hell are you talking about? What is going on?
You're going to wrap them in foil?
They're better when they're just a little green. Yeah.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Too much work.
Not that much trouble, really.
Too much work.
Says the guy that's got a spreadsheet with 3,000 fantasy teams.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Welcome back. So we're up here in our building, and it's set up like a square. As I draw the shape of a square to our television audience.
I was going to say,
subconsciously,
I almost forgot that you're doing that for a purpose now.
I wasn't thinking of doing it. I'm saying square, and I'm doing it subconsciously. So we're one corner. The corner to our left is also us, like our front door, basically. That I'm not even sure if it still opens, but we do have a front door. To the right is a different business and a hallway. Have you ever walked across and down that hallway?
You mean where we used to have offices?
Mm-hmm.
I did that just the other day, last week one day, because I like to get up. I like to get up during the breaks and walk around. Just sitting here for hours on end just doesn't make me feel good. So I like to get up, help my mind work a little bit. And
always have agreed with that.
I have like one little route that I take inside the confines here without having to leave and use my fob. But the other day I went out there and I'm like, I don't know if anything ever got in down here. And I just went, and I didn't try any of the doors, but there's no signs. There's nothing. It appears there's just empty space down there, I think.
Severance vibes.
Yeah.
There are like 7 doors.
Yeah.
There's no labels on any of them. There's no signage for any. I don't even know.
Right.
One has a keypad, so you must have to know like a password to get in it.
That's the one. Yeah,
that used to be us.
That used to be us. I wonder if because it's still the fob thing is there too. I wonder if our fobs still open that door.
I don't know.
I doubt it.
But like it's just a long, empty hallway. Yeah. On Severance, there are like 50 of them.
It's a maze.
That are like supposedly all different, but are probably all the same hallway. She just runs. I just finished episode 4. She just runs as fast as she can down the hallway, and then she turns, and then she's probably running right back through the same hallway.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have that. I've done that same walk for many, many years. Just usually like 2:30. I call it the Tyrod Taylor walk. It goes back to when Tyrod Taylor was here because I would use it to like when I needed an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, even after he'd left the Bills, I said this on the air once. I recognized that the first thought I would have on the course of like trying to brainstorm is Tyrod Taylor. So I call it the Tyrod Taylor walk.
Right.
Down across to the other building, around the loop there's a waterfall back, and then however many times I need to do it. And usually like in one turn, I'll think of like 3 or 4 things that I like, and sometimes stop in that walkway or the atrium to type it into my phone so I don't forget it, because now I'm more likely to forget it.
Yeah, that'll happen. Yeah, I need some alternate routes because I have. Well, I'm having a. This is definitely better left unsaid. So here we go. There's a conference room at the end of one of these hallways inside this area where we work, and the big table and chairs all around it. And this is especially a problem for me when it's not going to be for much longer because it's getting lighter longer. But when it gets dark at 4:45, 5 o'clock, I'm walking down there, and if the chairs are askew,
oh no,
I could trip. So early in the day, I'll go down there and like sort of push all the chairs in so I know they're out of my way for later when I want to take the same walk. That has turned into me kind of obsessively, compulsively arranging all the chairs so they're symmetrical and look. It settles my mind to have them look a certain way. I, though, now have realized after months of walking down there, I've realized that there are 2 different styles of chairs. They look close, they're black with arms on them and you can adjust them, like the chairs you have in an office. But the arms are different, so some of them don't fit under the table as well as the others. And I actually looked in the neighboring conference room to see if there were enough of the one kind of chair that I could exchange for the other kinds of chairs, and then I had to walk out of there because I think I'm going insane. And I don't want to feed this compulsion, so I need to walk somewhere else because continuing to walk down there is going to end with me buying new chairs.
For the station. So that they match and fit under the table, so everything looks symmetrical and everything matches, and it settles my stupid brain. How have you managed so long in this room? Nothing matches in this room.
I just pretend that there's nothing to be done about it. Although the chairs are all the same. All 4 of the chairs that are in here are the exact same chairs.
You're not calling that thing behind me a chair?
I don't know what the hell that thing is, and it's broken.
There's some broken chair-like object.
I think Jeremy had a phase where sitting on that was good for his back. Using that, like kneeling on it in some way instead of sitting in a chair like this, was better for his back. So I think that's what that's doing there. But then
and yet, broke. 16 years after it broke, it still sits in this room.
Right.
It's worse than my house.
So really, the mess doesn't bother me if the stuff matches.
Okay.
So this room doesn't bother me. That conference room drives me insane is what I'm getting at. And I know that that's not healthy. And I'm not even making fun. Like I'm not making fun of people who are really debilitated with it. Like these are the kinds of things that bother me and I have to fix. And I'm going to just stop going in the room because I know that it's not
take the severance walk.
It's just not. It's not healthy. What am I doing down here?
Take the severance walk. No one's going to chase
chairs.
you.
I'm going to move. I'm going to rearrange. Make it stop.
That's one way you could make it stop. There's nothing out of place in the severance hallway because there's nothing in the severance hallway. There's nothing there that could be out of place. There's not even a letter out of place because there's no signage. There's no lettering. There's no nothing. It's the severance hallway.
Where are you? You said episode 4 you just finished?
Yes.
Oh, I cannot wait for you to get... I just finished rewatching season 1 in preparation to start season 2, which I still have not done. I've had time. I finished a few days ago rewatching season 1, but I want to wait. I think episode 6 is coming Friday of the new season, and I don't even know how many there are, but I want to wait until they're all there because I don't want to start it and then have to wait a week for another one and then a week, and just give me them all, and I want to because I watch them 2 at a time, and so it'll only take me 3 or 4 days to watch the whole new season. So I'm just waiting, but man, that show is one of the best things I've ever watched on television.
Apple TV. I'm liking it a lot.
Good. I'm glad you like it. I thought my wife watched season 1 over with me when I told her I was going to do this, and I wouldn't say she disliked it, but she just was like, what are we doing here? Like, it takes time. It's a slow burn.
Well, I mean, there's Lost in it. There's definitely shades of Lost in it. Trying to figure out what it has what it means and then what's happening. It's great. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Earlier, we talked to Mike Ginnnitti of Spotrac, went through a few guys, Cook, Rousseau, and also the wide receiver position, and sort of like, what do I want to do here? I've got old receivers or guys that aren't old but aren't good, mostly, and then a couple of guys who are neither old nor bad, but they're going to cost me more money than I'm spending, probably. So he slipped in. He put Amari Cooper at $15 million. Mike did.
Was that high?
Yeah.
Okay.
He slipped in Amari Cooper at $15 million because he had Godwin at 20.
Okay. Yeah, it wasn't 10, 15. All right, good. That I give it, and part of that point was what? There's nobody else out there. Right? I mean, Cooper is coming off maybe was this his worst season without an injury anyway. Well, he was injured too, but it's got to be close to his worst season. But he's only, last year he had 11 or 1,200 yards with Cleveland, and the year before that he had similar. Like he was getting paid, near at the time anyway. He's been passed many times over now, but he was in the mid-20s, I think, cap number wise. So
we realized recently that he's made $136 million.
Right, you asked me yesterday, I think, and I guessed $125 million. So he's got the reputation and the buy you anything in the league, but I think the factors being there isn't a great crop of free agent wide receivers, nor a great crop of draftable wide receivers. At least that's how it is being portrayed right now. It could change. They could end up, hitting on a bunch of guys later in the draft. But as far as like blue chip receiver talent, it's nothing like last year at all. So what does that mean? Like if you need a guy, Amari Cooper is going to start to look pretty good to you if you're just – I'm not saying a good team will do this or a team with cap challenges, but if some team out there that's just sort of wandering around, they've got a young quarterback they're trying to figure out, and they want to get him a present, right? They want to get him a guy that knows how to do it and can show him how to work and all the stuff. Maybe the Colts for this are an idea. Richardson, one last stand for Richardson. Let's sign Amari Cooper, 3 years, $45 million. Here you go. Come on in. I don't think that's crazy. I wouldn't want to do it. It's crazy in a certain way, but within the league and what's out there this year, I wouldn't be surprised at all if something like that happened for Amari Cooper. It's one of the reasons why I don't think it's that realistic for the Bills to be able to hang on to him on a reasonable contract, because to me, that's not a reasonable contract.
31 in June. He's played 10 years, right? I don't know. Like that's really going to be, it's Matt Harmon time. Cooper, Hopkins even, Godwin even, Diggs, and he mentioned who else? Keenan Allen, Brandon Cooks,
did you say
Mike Williams.
Cup in here even?
Cup and Samuel, who are not free agents, but
right.
Yes. Like you've got a basket of receivers here who may or may not be done, and it's really like running backs last year. It's a lot like that. We don't have that in running backs this year. You've got running backs this year in free agency who are just not as accomplished as some of last year's guys were, but are last year's guys still good bets? And that's the question. Like, what's a better idea? Forget that he played for the Bills, or that they both did. What's a better idea, Cooper or Diggs? You're a team that's never had either one on your team. Who would you rather have on your team? Any team. Who would we rather be signing?
That's close. I think it's close. Diggs is coming off an injury. He didn't look like himself when he was, at the end here, and then was being used largely as a slot guy in Houston. So Cooper at least still offers you. Not to say Diggs couldn't do that. I mean, it depends on what your team looks like, I suppose, who you've got, where on the field, and schematically. But Cooper still affords you the outside. Really, I don't think he's ever really been a slot guy at all. Maybe that's coming for him if his foot speed decreases. Maybe it's coming for him as soon as this year. Maybe somebody signs him specifically with that in mind. Like, it's time for you to make the transition from being, 98 miles an hour on the paint to being more of a
possession.
Just you're going to get by.
Yeah.
Right? Just wily veteran type guy. That I always thought was a transition. It's one of the reasons why, like, assuming everything was always going to be harmonious, if Diggs was going to continue to be on the Bills, he's under contract, I don't want to eat dead money. That's why even before last offseason, the offseason before that, when they drafted Kincaid, get me a guy to replace Diggs. Beasley's done. I bump Diggs inside. I'm still going here. I'm going to have to adjust his contract eventually, but I think I've still got my band together. So I think that could happen for Cooper.
So Cooper over Diggs. Keenan Allen over both. Keenan Allen's 33 in the spring to start the season, 12 years. He had the best season of the three. He scored 7 touchdowns for the Bears. I think that's an all-time Bears record for any player. 7 touchdowns. Can you imagine how many touchdowns that is?
Career leader
guy on the
in
Bears?
touchdown receptions. Keenan Allen with 7.
Yes. He's the new career receiving leader in Bears history.
Displacing Willie Gault, who had 6. No, okay, I'll stop. None of this is factual.
I'm going to check that.
Keenan Allen.
Who is the Bears' all-time leading receiver?
Definitely had the better year, no question. Man, I feel like that guy is like another half step away from becoming Travis Kelce. Like, in the current state that Travis Kelce is.
He always is.
Right.
Like, for years he's been old, question mark?
Somebody takes him on, yes. Do I want him? No. I need at some point to invest in some speed on this offense, and
he's not it. No,
signing 33-year-old Keenan Allen is just like the antithesis of that. Like, what am I doing here?
Stephon Diggs had more receiving yards for the Bills than any player in Bills history or in Bears history has had for the Bears.
Wait, career?
Yes,
in
4 years.
4 years of Diggs.
4 years of Diggs produced 5,372 receiving yards. The all-time Bears leader is 5,059, Johnny Morris, who retired in 1967.
I don't even want to think about what my face looks like on the camera feed right now. Like, this is
second place is Harlan Hill, who retired in 1961 with 4,616, which is fewer than Frank Lewis had for the Bills in 6 years.
In Ben Johnson, we trust.
Walter Payton is 4th all-time in Bears receiving yards. Alshon Jeffrey is 3rd. Post-merger, the leader is Alshon Jeffrey. Okay.
How many yards did Rome Odunze have last year? He didn't have a very big year at all. Did he have 800 yards? Did he have 700 yards?
No, he had like 2 good games.
I'm just wondering how long. Like, will he set the all-time Bears mark for receiving yards before his rookie contract is up?
Oh, that's a good bet. I'm trying to find him on the list without just clicking on his name. Big disappointment this year.
Yeah.
734, so close to Keenan Allen.
All right.
Will he get to 5,000 by 2029? Or through 2028?
Yeah.
He'd better.
That's a couple of really big years. I mean, with a 750 to start, you're going to have to have there's going to have to be a 1,500 in there somewhere.
Maybe. I would totally bet it.
Yeah.
That he does. I would bet it. I love the question. I will bet that Odunze will be the all-time leader in Bears receiving yards through 5 seasons. And he started with 734, which was bad. Like, efficiency was terrible. Only a couple of good games. You saw the Bears season. They were terrible. The offense stunk with Caleb Williams. And he still did that on 54 catches. That's pretty good, yards per catch.
Yeah.
I mean, 1,000 yards 4 times, which is good but not amazing, gets him close. So I'm in on that. This is my new favorite thing.
Really?
This is going to be my new favorite
I
thing.
just spit that out here
Yep.
at 6:20 on a Wednesday night.
That's how it happens.
Here it is. All right.
It's often how great ideas get born. Just sort of randomly. But yes, the all-time Bears receiving leader is Johnny Morris with 5,059. At least he got to 5,000.
You can't take that away from him.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It really, truly is.
Galt was 9th, by the way. You mentioned him.
Galt? Yeah, okay.
Good poll.
Sure.
Allen Robinson, 11th. 4 seasons. Not the group.
The poor Bears.
Poor Bears. If you missed Mike Ginnnitti, really good stuff on the Odyssey app. He was on with us at 5 today. Tomorrow we'll have Greg Wyshynski on as the Four Nations face-off starts tonight, Canada and Sweden at 8 from Montreal. Also today, Chris Trapasso joined us on the NFL Draft. He's a weekly guest this time of year. It started today. Ashton Genty, receivers, defensive line, what the Bills need, all of that we covered with Chris. We'll have that for you coming up. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. This is WGR.
Never miss a second. WGR SportsRadio550.
Chris Trapasso joined us maybe even 2 seasons. Maybe even
now,
two seasons. I know last year
and
for
we've
sure
enjoyed
every
that
week
very
talking
much.
about
It's
the
been
draft.
2 years now. Yeah.
And we've enjoyed that very much. We've learned a lot, and here we go again. Thank you, Chris, for giving us your time.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. This is an exciting time of the year because it's like right when you feel like, oh, man, the NFL season's over. Like, there's no more football. In fact, there's actually a lot of football to be watched. We have the Combine in a couple weeks, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to talk to you guys every week.
Well, we really appreciate that heading in here to year 3 of previewing the draft on a regular basis with you, Chris. We've spent the first hour of our show talking about James Cook, and a part of that conversation is the running back rich draft that appears to be presenting itself here coming up at the end of April, and what to do and how to proceed. How rich and how much variety is there within this running back class?
There's a lot. So we're going to hear so much about Ashton Jeanty, and that will be justified. He's going to be a first-round pick, and I'm usually, or I guess I have been, an advocate of never pick a running back in the first round. But we've seen, and I understand the game evolves. You have to kind of continue to update your draft philosophies. That, a 22, 23-year-old running back up to 25, 26 can be very impactful on a team if he can make guys miss, if he can hit home runs, and Jeanty can do that. But as I've gone through the rest of the running back class, there is as much of a collection of those type of players that I can remember. Maybe going back 2017, which was such a tremendous running back class, there was probably more top-end talent in that draft class. That was Joe Mixon, Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette was in that class. But second, third, fourth rounders, and we'll ultimately be able to kind of slide these players into specific round ranges post-combine. But it is a very deep running back class where a few weeks ago, if you would have had me on, I would have said, hey, look, if a team wants Ashton Jeanty, pick him in the first round, I'm fine with it. But as I really this week finished up most of like the top 10 to 12 running backs, I'm like, man, I like him. I like this guy. I like that guy. There's so many where I'm like, maybe I'm going to kind of stick with my original opinion of just wait beyond round 1 to pick a running back. And if the blocking is good, you can get quality production from your ground game from a bunch of backs in this class.
I am curious, before we do more here, about your thoughts on Jeanty and just like his comps. Is he better than Bijan? I've read that. Other people disagree. I read how he was not a top high school product or prospect, partly because he was playing high school football in Italy on naval bases. Like he was not in a established program really, and then he got to the point where in year 3 at Boise he was like record stuff. How high is too high for Jeanty, and is there a team that you like him for?
Well, I think the Dallas Cowboys just seem obvious. I think they pick 12, and I will say by about late March I'll have like the draft order memorized. I don't have it memorized yet. The Cowboys would make sense. Just seems like a Jerry Jones type of decision. They were running out there Rico Dowdle this past season. They have a clear need at that feature back spot. Their offensive line kind of needs some work, but it's not like it's a terrible unit. Tyler Guyton, their first rounder last year, had an okay rookie season at tackle. They have Tyler Smith at guard, who's one of the better young guards in football. So I think that's probably as high as I think what seems conceivable for him, because we are certainly coming off this running back renaissance season with Derrick Henry, even Josh Jacobs, obviously Saquon Barkley, where teams are maybe saying, hey, maybe there is some value at the running back spot, which is kind of why I'm saying that I'm not totally entrenched with never picking a running back. But I think somewhere top 15 for Ashton Jeanty. Not quite Bijan, not quite Saquon Barkley, but he does have, to me, the best contact balance of any running back I've ever scouted. He's a little smaller, not crazy elusive, but it can sometimes take 4 and 5 and 6 defenders to bring him to the turf.
Yeah, I'm glad you referenced the running back renaissance point, Chris, because this class of running backs is coming along at a very interesting time for the league with that having happened, right? Because I think it feels like it could cut both ways. On one hand, if there's all this talent, maybe teams and they're watching Josh Jacobs and Barkley and Jeanty and thinking like, I want to get the best guy I can get, so I'm going to draft him in the first round and have him for 4 4 years on a rookie contract, 5th-year option, whatever, we'll see, and then deal with it, when the smoke clears. On the other hand, if it's so deep, you can wait, pay less in premium assets, and then ultimately in contract too. But then you don't have the 5th-year option hanging there. I wonder how that's all going to play out. And mixed into that stew for us here in Buffalo is James Cook and him posting on Instagram last night, $15 million. Holy cow, what are we going to do? So there's a lot of moving parts. It feels like.
Yeah, to me, what I'm taking from it is, and all those points were good. What I'm taking from how I think the league will react and should react to what we saw at the running back position in this 2024 season is that, there are certainly some guys that are not making the right decisions in NFL front offices. But in general, I think the league has gotten smarter with analytics and understanding how and where we should place the importance of the running back position and the run game in general. To me, what I'm taking from it is, if you get a really highly talented running back like Saquon Barkley behind the best offensive line in the NFL or Derrick Henry, high-caliber offensive line in Baltimore, then yes, you can get high-level production. I think back to a few drafts ago, or I guess 3 or 4 now, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne. We all talked about, the Travis Etienne to Buffalo rumors in that draft cycle. But that was obvious that those running backs themselves were not going to just transcend and totally transform those two teams' run games because they didn't really have good offensive lines. They've been okay. They've had flashes, but haven't really lived up to the first-round hype. I think teams that already have established units up front or feel really good about their free agent signings or their year 2 or year 3 blockers, then, they'll probably prioritize an Ashton Jeanty or the 2 running backs from Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson. But I think in general, if teams are maybe we aren't going to be the best in terms of blocking for the run, then let's just wait on those running backs and hope that they can make defenders miss and make the most of what there is in front of them in terms of running lanes on every down.
We certainly have more things to get to draft-centric wise, but do you want to weigh in on an opinion on the Bills and James Cook and what makes sense moving forward?
I would not pay him $15 million a year. Now, that could be, if we're projecting ahead one more season, everything's going up. There's inflation in the NFL too. That there are people that would be big defenders of signing James Cook to a long-term deal. Say, hey, you know what, $15 million for an elite level running back. I still wouldn't do that because to me, I think everything that I just said about the run blocking and how key that is. I think for as great of a breakout season as James Cook had, and I think that he ran with more power. The fumbling issue was totally gone. He can hit those long runs. He's kind of deceptively fast. That was the book on him coming out of Georgia. I don't know if he has that season if the Bills don't block as well as they did. He's not super elusive. You can look at the advanced statistics on that. Not a lot of forced missed tackles. And he's not a contact balance guy where he's going to absorb 4 and 5 hits. And, wow, how did he turn that, what should have been a negative yard gain, into a 7-yard gain like you see from the elite level back? So there's nothing against James Cook, and he deserves all the praise that he's getting. But if you're projecting forward, you're thinking about other veterans on the team, I just still would not pay a running back that much money. And again, like we're talking about, this running back class, again, it's not near the top of the priority list for the Bills, but they could pick another, round 4 Ray Davis type, and suddenly with Davis, a rookie, and Ty Johnson, they could be totally fine and get fine production from their running game in 2025 and beyond for a lot cheaper.
Early-ish prediction, how many running backs go in round 1? Over, under 2.5?
I can only think, unless I'm totally blanking, I can only think of one.
Okay.
So under. If Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State tests through the roof, and he could, that he could maybe sneak in there. But from just in terms of buzz right now, it feels like we're going to have one of those drafts where it's going to feel like every third pick in round 2 and round 3 is a running back. There's that many who are, all different flavors and different skill sets and traits, obviously. But it feels like that's what the league understands. That's still a premium pick, but that's where the real bulk of this running back class is on the second day of the draft.
Chris Trapasso, why do you hate Omarion Hampton and Caleb Johnson?
Okay, it kind of goes back to the same thought that I had about James Cook, that Caleb Johnson, Omarion Hampton are both big running backs, like 6 foot, 225. Caleb Johnson, I think, was born to play with Kyle Shanahan, or now that coaching tree is so gigantic in the league. Stretch runs, inside zone, outside zone. The Bills certainly run a lot of that as well. I mean, every team does. In terms of making guys miss on a consistent level, that's not really his game. And I think that's the ultimate skill that you have to have at the running back position. Now, both of them can run over guys, and the contact balance is good, but we'll see at the combine. To me, I didn't see that either of those two had elite-level traits to ultimately go in the first round. Now, if one of them runs 4.38 and has a 40-inch vertical, you add that with their size, and then they have great contact balance, then we could be maybe talking about them in the late first or early second. But I always look for those guys who are really elusive, that can make that linebacker miss, that's unblocked in the hole. That, to me, is more important than anything else at that position.
Last thing for me on running backs, is there a Cook replacement
Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports.
You like the most idea, Friday or Saturday?
Yeah, RJ Harvey from UCF. I'm kind of trying to dive deep and get super nerdy with my NFL draft comparisons this year. Like, I'm spending a lot of time on them. I think it just helps for these conversations, for when I'm writing where people don't know these names. I almost went with Bucky Irving for him, but I ultimately went with Devin Singletary. He's that type of just laterally elusive. It's hard for me to say that. But he has juice down the field. He's going to give you more ability to hit a 40 or a 50-yard run. That was kind of the one glaring weakness on Devin Singletary's film. He's probably my favorite right now, and if you wanted a little more size but still the same type of ability to hit those long runs, Jarquez Hunter from Auburn reminds me so much of Kyron Williams, who was a fifth-round pick but has become this touchdown machine in L.A. Great vision. The contact balance is awesome. He's really, effortlessly powerful. But if he gets to that second level without being touched, he can score on a 60-yard run. So those two, to me, a little bit different. R.J. Harvey's a little smaller, but those could be Cook replacements who, would cost a fraction of the price and be younger with less mileage on their legs in a few years.
James Cook replacement. How dare you, Bulldog? I mean, February 12th. How dare you? Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports.
Job's got to be done, Mike.
Here on WGR. The Bills at 30. An overview here as we have our first conversation of the season, Chris. A couple of positions that might make sense for what they need, in your opinion, and who's available, as in which positions are sort of the deepest in round one.
Well, it kind of aligns for the Bills pretty well. I think you guys know, all your listeners know, and I certainly know this, that they need help in the trenches, and I think Sean McDermott wants that, Brandon Beane wants that, whether it's defensive tackle or defensive end, and it is a very good class at both of those positions. It's not just Abdul Carter. It's not just Mason Graham inside from Michigan. And to me, it's kind of ironic that it kind of aligns with that 2021 draft, where after an AFC title game loss to the Chiefs, where the Bills really couldn't get after Patrick Mahomes enough, they doubled down and went Greg Rousseau and then Carlos Basham in the first two rounds. And both of those drafts, we saw a bunch of defensive ends go in the first round in 2021. The Bills probably got one of the better ones late in that first round, and I think even if teams need those premium positions, there are enough that feel like they are going to be first-round caliber, and as always, this is combine pending. It's a really good edge rusher and interior defensive line class, so it will come down to the grades. It'll come down to, of course, what the Bills prioritize, and, of course, what they do in free agency, filling some of those defensive needs in the trenches.
Do you have any thoughts on what I think probably my first draft crush? No, I shouldn't say that. There was a receiver at the Senior Bowl that I really liked from Oregon, Tez Johnson. Yeah. Nick Amenwuri, the big safety from South Carolina. Give us your broad strokes on him, because he reads a little like Kyle Hamilton, Derwin James to me, and I'm intrigued by the idea of a guy like that on the back end of this defense.
Me too.
Yeah, definitely. So my comparison for him is Jeremy Chin. He's kind of in that Jeremy Chin, Derwin James mold. 6'3", 220. He's probably going to be one of the biggest testers at the combine. So much talent on that South Carolina defense last year. It was kind of weird. They kind of flew under the radar in the SEC, didn't make the college football playoff, but then you're watching these games back and you're like, man, there's just really good players everywhere. He's that type. He can be that robber in the middle of the defense. He closes on the football like a corner. He hits like an outside linebacker. If he was there close to 30, I could see the Bills being like, this is our player that can really add a true dynamic game changer at the safety position. I think they like Taylor Rapp. Of course, Cole Bishop being a second-rounder entering year two, I think they'll give him a chance. But Nick Amenwuri is someone that I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at him like a Kyle Hamilton or a Derwin James type, because the traits are there, and it wasn't like he was lost in coverage or didn't know his assignment. He looks like an NFL-ready instant impact starter at the safety spot.
The Bills have 2 second-round picks and no third. Are we going to be talking about the wide receivers in the second round for them, you think?
I hope so. I mean, so my draft crush, especially for the Bills, was Jack Bash, I guess still is, the TCU wide receiver who won Senior Bowl MVP. He reminds me so much of Puka Nacua. And what's funny is it's like when I've had to say that a few times on like other podcasts, people are like, whoa, Puka Nacua, easy. It's like, wait, this guy was a 5th-round pick who did not test well at the combine. No one would have scoffed at any comparison to Puka Nacua. That's probably my favorite idea for the Bills in round 2. We'll see if he lasts that long, and certainly the combine will factor in with him. But to go like edge rusher and then defensive tackle, and then with that second pick in the second round to go wide receiver, to me that, at least right now, free agency, seems like the best course of action for the Bills, because I still think they need a little bit of an upgrade in their wide receiver room.
Over under first-round receivers, 3.5.
So let me think here. Ted McMillan, Arizona is going to go, and I'm saying this like I absolutely am sure of it, but it's just kind of how it feels right now. He's going to be a first-round pick. Luther Burden from Missouri, most likely a first-round pick. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. I'm going to go over because I think whether it's Jack Bash or someone else just tests into the first round, but after so many years of 5, 6, 7 receivers going in the first round, I think we had 7 last year, didn't we?
7 with Leggett.
7 with Leggett, yeah, and obviously that run late that the Bills stayed away from at the end of the first last year. I think just over 3.5, but we'll get to 4 wide receivers in the first round.
Overall, like we'll talk a lot as we go through this, until free agency gets here or Myles Garrett gets traded somewhere else. If they make a big play for a big player like that, obviously you're using some of these assets. Where the Bills are picking usually isn't that enviable, but this year there seems like, and I think I've seen from you already on social media, Chris, that you have a lower number of first-round grades on guys than usual, but the middle class here, like 20 to 60, 20 to 70, is maybe a lot of similar grades. So, I don't know, which way does that cut? Is that advantageous for the Bills? Because they're going to get 3 pretty comparable. If they use all those picks, their 30th and then the 2 second-rounders, they might get 3 pretty comparable players. Is that good or bad?
No, I think it's good, but to kind of tie into the beginning of that question, I wonder if Brandon Beane, and certainly you would have to get the Cleveland Browns to feel the same, but if Brandon Beane could be like, hey, our pick 30, we're probably not going to get one of our quote-unquote first-round grades at 30s, and we don't really want to take someone that we have graded at 45 at pick 30, so we would be more willing to part with that first-round pick this year, and we're expecting to be picking very late in the first round next year to get someone like Myles Garrett. My one thing that I'll say on this is that being a draft guy and, of course, experiencing the drought, it's always ingrained in my head, plan for the future, think about long term, get as many picks as possible, trade back. But at this point, and I'm just not insinuating that the Bills window is closed. It's not. As long as Josh Allen is on the roster, it's open. But Josh Allen is not 22 where you're just get as many picks for now would be the time to make that maybe even kind of crazy signing where you're yeah, we overspent a little, but we got 30-year-old Myles Garrett with 28-year-old Josh Allen on this team right now. And, we're all talking about the Eagles and how much money they have tied up in void years. It's almost $400 million on their roster that they're going to eventually have to pay over the next 4 or 5 years for guys who are not going to be on their team. But no one in Philadelphia cares right now because they actually won a Super Bowl. So that's kind of where I'm getting at, where I'm kind of going away from always thinking of the long-term future when it comes to this Bills team right now.
Good stuff. Last year, 10 of the first 37 picks were receivers, including Keon Coleman. 1 running back in the first 2 rounds, Jonathan Brooks, who was coming off an ACL tear and then tore another ACL in the season for Carolina. Very good, Chris. Looking forward already to our next chat.
All right, guys. Me too. Thanks a lot.
Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports. Listening tomorrow, Greg Wyshynski with the Four Nations Face-Off and much more on the Bills offseason. Talk to you then, 3 o'clock. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.